Sweet the whispers in your ear whenever ember wanders near.
So anyway, I want to jump into this because this may take us a while, considering it's an hour and a half. So we are just gonna jump straight in and let us find about the man that inspired the character, at least one of the men that inspired the character of Mel Gibson in The Patriot, Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox. Let's do this.
All right, some of you probably already know this, but in case you don't, and before you ask, yes, this is the main inspiration for Mel Gibson's character in the movie The Patriot. Today we're talking about, in my opinion, the most important militia leader and guerrilla warfare fighter in American history. Ladies and gentlemen, after the Revolutionary forces suffered a crushing defeat at the Battle of Camden, the British believed that they had driven out any resistance they had in the South. They believed that the South was won. But what the British don't know is that there is still one man standing in their way, a French and Indian war veteran that has been doing nothing for the past 15 years but being a humble indigo farmer in South Carolina.
And trying to build a chair.
His name is Francis Marion. He is 48 years old. He is 5'4", 115 pounds, and has a bum leg.
He's almost my size. Chat, he's almost knee size. He's only got like 2 inches of height on me. He's only got like 1 inch of height on a good day. And if I'm wearing heels, I'm taller than him. If I'm wearing heels, I got 2 inches on him.
But despite his small stature, he is about to prove himself to be the biggest pain in the ass for the British in the entire American Revolution by launching one of, if not the most successful guerrilla warfare campaigns of all time. So successful, in fact, that the British would wind up sending out over half a dozen death squads led by their best field officers to hunt him down, only for them to ultimately remark, and I quote, "The devil himself couldn't catch him," earning him the nickname the Swamp Fox. And we're going to get into all of it right after a word from our sponsor.
Delete me. Why do you have the same guns?
They look similar, but they're different. That one's 5.56, and that one's 300 Blackout. My second favorite set of twins.
Then I'm gonna get a new purse.
You have enough purses.
And you have enough guns.
Can't argue with that logic.
This video is brought to you by Delete Me. Super simple, straightforward business model. You give them money, they turn around and they make sure that data brokers on the internet aren't selling your personal information to anybody that wants to buy it. Okay, here's how this works. Pretty much anytime you sign up for something that's free on the internet and you give them your personal information, it's not actually free. They make their money by turning around and selling your personal information.
Oh, hold on. I hate to interrupt the ad read, but I have to address this. Cheater for wearing heels. Yurando. You try and tell me that you don't love it when I wear stilettos. Go ahead. Tell me you don't love it when I'm wearing 4 or 5 inch stiletto heels. Go on. I'll wait.
To data brokers who then turn around and sell it to the highest bidder. Now, legally speaking, these data brokers are required to stop selling your information if you ask them to. The problem is there's a ton of different data brokers. You don't know which ones have your information, and they all have a different way you have to go through submitting an opt-out request. And that's where Delete Me comes in. They monitor all of the major data brokers, and they will submit opt-out requests automatically for you. And then they will continue to monitor those data brokers constantly and resubmit opt-out requests if that data broker re-gets your information.
Heels.
Basically, the oversimplified version of this
is
Delete Me is a subscription service that allows everything that's free on the internet to actually be free. So yeah, if you want to go check them out, I'll have a link in the discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. All right, per usual from the top, but also I'm going to hurry this up because I want to get to all the cool stuff. All right, our story begins in 1732 when a young Francis Marion is born. When he is born, he is presumably premature because he is a very, very small baby being compared to the size of a New York rabbit. In modern times, he would probably spend the first weeks or months of his life inside of a NICU under extensive care from a hospital, but because it's 1732, that's not really an option.
He dies.
But Francis Marion's a fighter. He pulls through. From here, he proceeds to spend most of his early childhood growing up on his family's 350-acre farm right outside of Charleston with his mom, his dad, and his 5 siblings. Somewhere along the way, Francis Marion's dad decides that he's not going to be a farmer anymore. He's going to be a merchant instead, so he moves the family over to Georgetown, and he spends the rest of his childhood growing up there. Now, presumably, that does not go very well because Francis Marion's dad promptly loses all of the family's money and then passes away when Francis Marion's a teenager. At this point in time, Francis Marion is the oldest sibling still living at home. All of his older siblings have gotten married, started their own families, and they all got an inheritance, but by the time it's Francis Marion's turn, there's nothing left to inherit. So he comes to the realization that like somewhere between 14 and 16 years old, he's going to have to fend for himself. He's going to have to get a job. He's in Georgetown, one of the biggest port cities in the United States at this point in time, so he figures, hey, I might as well go off, become a merchant sailor. Maybe I can become a ship captain one day. I'll make a ton of money, and I'll be able to join the aristocracy. I'll be part of higher class society. So that's what he does. Goes out to the port, gets a job on a ship that's crewed by himself and 5 other guys, and they set sail on his first voyage, his first adventure. And then 2 days into that adventure, the ship suffers a catastrophic malfunction and the entire thing sinks, and now the crew is stranded at sea in a life raft with no food and no water. They basically have to paddle their happy asses all the way back to South Carolina. During that process, 2 of the crew members die, and Francis Marion and the remaining 3 are all severely dehydrated and malnourished.
Our greatest adventure is over before it began, and no one will even remember us.
But Francis Marion survives. He makes it back to Georgetown, at which point he promptly decides, fuck that sailing thing, I'm never doing that again. He then decides to become a hunter and wanders into the swamps of South Carolina, where he makes his money killing animals. And he does that for about the next 5 years. He becomes an excellent shot. He becomes an expert in this type of terrain, and he knows the entire countryside like the back of his hand.
Stick with me, kid. I know this town like the back of my hand. Hey, that's new.
Okay, fast forward, 1755, Francis Marion is 22 years old.
And just as a reminder, what was the thing that, do you guys recall the thing that Mel Gibson's character said in The Patriot to his sons? And I don't know if Nick is going to bring this up further in the video when this occurs, but do you remember, like, talking about how he became an expert hunter? What was it that he said to his sons when they were hunting the British after they burned down their home? Do you guys remember the yeah, aim small, miss small. It's like, it's kind of, it kind of sets the scene. It's kind of setting things up for that scene. Like, this guy knows how to shoot. He's a fucking sniper.
And his mom and his older brother Gabriel decide they want to move to St. John, and Francis Marion decides that he's going to go with them. Shortly after getting to St. John, his older brother Gabriel marries a woman from the aristocracy, and he is given a pretty large estate, at which point he gives a portion of it to his younger brother, Francis Marion. He uses that land to become a pretty successful rice and indigo farmer. Now, by this point in time, the French and Indian War is going on. People are worried about attacks from Native Americans, so Francis Marion joins the St. John's militia, and it's basically just like the standing army in case the Native Americans attack. He's not actually going out there and engaging in combat. Essentially, it's just a bunch of local guys that get together and drill and train with their rifles after church on Sunday. That goes on for a number of years, and then in 1759, Francis Marion gets directly involved. All right, important background info, just so we're all on the same page. The French and Indian War, real quick, real dirty, oversimplified version of what's happening. The British and the French are both basically trying to colonize North America. They're fighting each other to do it, and they have both teamed up with different Native American tribes to go to war with one another. Initially, the Cherokee are teamed up with the British, and they help the British take over some French forts, and they say that they were promised in exchange for helping the British take this French fort that they would be paid in horses, which are extremely valuable at the time. So they go out, they take the fort, at which point the Cherokee go back to the British, and they're like, okay, hey, we did the thing. We'd like to get paid with our horses now. And the British are like, we never agreed to that. I don't know what you're talking about. At which point the Cherokee are understandably pretty pissed off, and they're looking around and there's like, well, there's all these farmers all over the place. They're British. They got horses. The British promised us horses. We're taking these fucking horses. So they take a bunch of farmers' horses in Virginia. Okay.
Now, as a reminder, not only are horses valuable to the Native Americans, they're also valuable to the Americans. The British American settlers that they just took them from. Because as you grow, like, think of like Wild West times. Remember, like in the Wild West, if stealing a man's horse was a hangable offense, that's not just like hyperbole. That's not just people in the Wild West saying like, I consider a horse more valuable than your life. No, the horse was responsible for you being able to survive. It was the horse is what pulled the plows. So it's what allowed you to tend your crops. It's what allowed you to transport those crops to town for other people to buy. The horse was what allowed people to go to town, to go to the store, to buy their supplies, like food, like rifles, like gunpowder, like hunting supplies, like farm implements. Like think of it this way. Okay, modern day. All right, let's go on the assumption that buses and public transportation do not exist. Okay, let's go on the assumption that buses, trains, and all forms of modern public transportation do not exist. You are living out in a countryside town where the nearest like general goods store is like 10 miles away from your home. The only means you have to get back and forth from that home is your car. Otherwise, you're doing the heel to toe express. Now, picture someone comes by and steals your car, and you are a farmer, and somebody comes and steals your car. You now have no means to go get supplies. You have no means to basically pull the plow because you pulled it by the car. You have no means of getting all of those goods to the store. It is literally your life's blood. It is your livelihood in a myriad of ways. And so that's what makes this so significant is stealing people's horses like this. That's basically just removing their ability to survive in the frontier in this way. That's why stealing a man's horse, like in the Wild West, was considered a death sentence because you're literally taking away that person's ability to even live.
That's the view of the Cherokee. Pretty understandable. From the view of the farmers who just had their horses stolen, they don't really know what the fuck is going on. They don't know that the British military promised the Cherokee a bunch of horses and then stiffed them, so they stole their horses instead, just assuming, British people is British people. So as far as the farmers are concerned, they're just a bunch of horse thieves. And what do you do to horse thieves back in the 1700s? You kill them. So all the Virginian guys get a group of boys together, they go out, they track down the Cherokee, they kill them, and they get their horses back. This kicks off the Anglo-Cherokee War, which is a smaller sub-war fought within the broader context of the French and Indian War. So now with things heating up, getting more serious, Francis Marion goes from being in the St. John's militia to joining the actual regimental provincial cavalry for the British, which is not a militia unit, it's the actual British military.
Cavalry.
So Francis Marion sets off on a campaign against the Cherokee Nation with the actual British military, not the militia, not a bunch of farmers that picked up muskets and brown vests from back home. No, this is the actual legitimate military, the best fighting force on the world at this point in time, and this is who Francis Marion is working with and being trained under. Actual British officers, actual British career soldiers. So while he's out on this campaign, he sees and learns how the British military actually works, how the officers think, how they prepare for battle, and most importantly, how fucking arrogant they are.
These are not the open battlefields to which you're accustomed.
I have fought in a great many battlefields.
Is that Andy Serkis? I have no idea what movie this is from, but is that Andy Serkis? What is this from? This is from Young Washington? Was he in it? Did he play this British officer? Yeah, was this him? Did he do it? What it was? God. Like, instantly I was like, holy, he looks young. Considering how old Kelsey Grammer, this couldn't have been Kelsey Grammer.
These are not the open battlefields to which you're accustomed.
I have fought in a great many battlefields.
That's Andy Serkis.
The British military thinks that they're untouchable. They go marching in their formations thinking that this is going to be, a conventional war fought back home in Europe in a big open field where everybody marches up and forms ranks and then stands there and takes shots at each other like a true gentlemanly type of warfare. And the Native Americans aren't playing that bullshit. They keep ambushing the British, taking pop shots at them from trees and then disappearing into the woods. And this goes on for 3 years. From 1759 to 1761, Francis Marion goes out on 3 expeditions with the British against the Cherokee Nation. During this time, Francis Marion kind of makes a name for himself. He's a small, wiry guy. He knows the terrain. He's got great conditioning. He's built for this type of warfare in this type of terrain. He grew up being a hunter for profit. He knows how to operate under these conditions. Because of that, he winds up becoming an officer, put in charge of light infantry companies, and his companies operate as the scouting element for the main force. And they're also being supported.
Wait. So Francis Marion started in the cavalry, and then he became like a scout. So Francis Marion, the swamp fox, was kind of a cav scout. Scouts out, baby!
Supported by another Native American tribe that's helping out the British in their war against the Cherokee, the Catawba. So while the rest of the main force is back marching in formations, waiting to get ambushed and then trying to form up lines and then shoot at the trees while the Native Americans are already gone, Francis Marion's out there ahead, operating in small unit tactics, doing the same thing the Native Americans are doing by launching raids, ambushes, and then disappearing. So now Francis Marion has not only experience with conventional British military fighting tactics, but also the guerrilla warfare tactics that are being implemented by the Native Americans that he has seen firsthand are capable of stalling and beating a much larger, much better equipped force. And this is usually where the analysis of how Francis Marion became such a badass guerrilla fighter ends. But another YouTuber and historian, Zach Masick over at Dead Warrior Society, who has studied Francis Marion pretty extensively and has done like 5, 6, 7 videos that are almost an hour long just on Francis Marion, made an important discovery. On this third expedition that Francis Marion was on, there was 13 men that had previously served in the French and Indian War under Robert Rogers as Rangers, and they were in Francis Marion's unit. Okay, if you don't know, Robert Rogers is like considered to be the first American Special Forces badass ever. This is why the 75th Ranger Regiment is called the Rangers, because of Robert Rogers and his Rangers. He literally developed the rules for ranging. He pioneered frontier combat, counter-guerrilla warfare, elite light infantry tactics, long-range reconnaissance. This guy started all of it. And now Francis Marion is working shoulder to shoulder and presumably learning from those guys. So not only is Francis Marion learning conventional British military tactics from the British, learning guerrilla warfare from the Native Americans, he's also learning counter-guerrilla warfare and elite light infantry tactics from the guys that started all of it, Robert Rogers Rangers.
This man is becoming this man is literally becoming the first Green Beret Special Forces in American history. Like he's taking all of this and he's going to be compiling it into his own fighting style, and he's literally going to be like the first SF guy.
And that's just on the tactical side. He learns a lot about leadership, specifically what not to do, from the British officer in charge of the entire expedition, Archibald Montgomery. Now, Francis Marion got his initial training from British officers and professional British military, so he's a very strict disciplinarian. That is his preference. He wants all of his men to have perfect uniforms, act like gentlemen, yada, yada, yada. Archibald Montgomery presumably wants the same exact thing. However, it just doesn't really work out, and Francis Marion gets to see that firsthand. Being a strict disciplinarian is fine when you're like back at base and living conditions are good, but when you're marching men hundreds of miles through the woods and everybody's living in the woods and living conditions suck and logistics are failing, being a strict disciplinarian about uniform doesn't really jive that well. Because of this, Francis Marion gets to see firsthand that if you're a strict disciplinarian while you're also working your men really hard in not the greatest conditions, you'll have guys that are playing up their injuries to get out of the field. You'll have guys deserting, and particularly because the British are still being helped by another Native American tribe, the Catawba, a lot of these Native American guerrilla fighters that are assisting the British initially end up saying screw this and they go home because they weren't being treated that great.
Not only that, if you think about it this way, it's not practical. You are wasting copious amounts of time being this like strict disciplinarian about like making sure everything is uniform, everything looks right. You're wasting time and you're also wasting energy, and that leads into that lack of morale, and that lack of morale can hinder you on the battlefield. It's like what is it? I think this is oh God, was it Murphy? It's like one of Murphy's law. Everything survives until first contact with the enemy, and it's kind of like this strict disciplinarian, everything being uniform approach to military service, like Montgomery's doing. Like all of that's well and good until you encounter the enemy, and then all of that completely falls apart. And if you're spending more time working, if you're spending more time and energy maintaining, like, looking proper versus actually, like, fighting to win, well, you're going to see what fucking happens. Then people are going to be worried more when they get into combat. If you're, like, with the military, part of military training is repetitiveness, to basically get you into the mindset that you are going to do something without even thinking about it, that it will come as second nature, and you will just do it without even realizing you're doing it. And if you drill into your soldiers so hard that, okay, everything has to be uniform and everything has to be perfect and everything like that, your soldiers might default in the heat of battle. Like, your soldiers might default to doing some action that would go to correcting their uniform, or correcting something to be uniform, versus focusing on the bad guy and killing your enemy. Now, is that an extreme circumstance? Yes, it is. Yes. Am I thinking in an extreme thing of, like, in the heat of battle, you're going to stop and fix your uniform? Yes, I am thinking in extremes here. Of course I am. But it's that kind of thing. It's like, when you're in the heat of battle, your instincts take over. That's how human beings operate when, you get stressed. And if your instinct, because you have been drilled over and over and over again of these pointless uniformity endeavors just to look right because your commanding officer has been such a disciplinarian about this, you might like flounder in the middle of combat because your brain's going, oh crap, I have to do this, when I should be focusing on taking out the enemy. Now, granted, not everyone's going to do that. I am speaking broadly, of course. I'm going to have people fucking adding me in the comments like, no, that's not a thing. That wouldn't hurt. I would never do that. But you see what I'm talking about. It's something that is taking space in your mind while you are engaged in combat. The only thing that should be taking up space in your mind is tactics, attacking, defeating the enemy. Those are the only kinds of things that should be on your mind when you're in battle, not the uniformity measures that have been drilled into over and over and over again. That's all that I'm saying.
So Francis Marion gets a lot of lessons in leadership about morale and who you can push, how hard you can push them, and when is the right time to do so. Obviously, a professional soldier, you can push and hold to a higher standard than a guerrilla fighter that's just trying to help you out. But all that's not going to matter until later, because right now they are about to enter a battle known as Etochi Pass. Now, Etochi Pass is basically the gateway to the Cherokee Nation. If they can punch through right here where the Cherokee have a massive defensive position up on a hill, they're going to be able to basically have free reign on the rest of the Cherokee Nation, destroy them, and win the war. Francis Marion and his platoon of some 30-odd men are basically the tip of the spear. They are leading their way up this hill, and they get about midway up this hill when the Cherokee launch their ambush. But because they're so far up this hill, most of the men that are hit in this ambush are the men further behind them at the base of the hill. So most of Marion's men survive the initial ambush, and from here the battle devolves into a long-range skirmishing firefight for the next 4 to 6 hours. And the only reason it stops is because the Cherokee literally run out of ammunition and are forced to retreat. From here, the British are able to punch through Etochi Pass into Cherokee territory, and Archibald Montgomery issues the order to his men to basically kill everybody and lay waste to everything. They burned down approximately 15 Native American settlements and burned down approximately 15,000 acres of corn, basically starving out the entire Cherokee Nation. Francis Marion sees all of this unfold, and he is absolutely disgusted. He writes back home to friends about how some of the men are seemingly joyful doing it because they're enacting revenge, because obviously the Cherokee had done horrible things to them and their friends, and they're getting revenge, so they're happy about it. And Francis Marion is just disgusted by the entire thing. In one of his letters, he said that he was almost reduced to tears watching these events unfold.
Jesus.
Soon after the Cherokee broke their treaty with the French. That's how we justified it.
This expedition, and one more that Francis Marion was not a part of, but did unfold in a very similar fashion, would ultimately lead to the Cherokee being forced to surrender and sign a peace treaty, leading to the end of the Cherokee War. With that, Francis Marion returns back home, and he is held in very high regard as a distinguished soldier that performed well on the battlefield, but despite that, he is still deeply traumatized by what he saw, and for that reason, he decides to go back home and become a farmer again. All right, fast forward like 15 years, 1775, Francis Marion has just been being a farmer this entire time. And while he's been doing that, things have been heating up politically between the colonials and the British, and because of that, in January of 1775, South Carolina elects the first provincial Congress of South Carolina. And Francis Marion's older brother Gabriel, because he's married to a wealthy woman of high status, is actually elected to the first provincial Congress. Couple months after that, in April, the Battle of Lexington and Concord happens, the opening battle of the American Revolution, and now the American Revolution is underway. Ipso facto, South Carolina's new Congress realizes they need a military, so they go about electing military officers to lead their militia, and because Francis Marion is A, a highly experienced soldier, and B, his brother is in Congress, his name gets thrown in the ring. He receives 135 votes, coming in third overall, and he is now one of the highest ranking officers in the South Carolina militia. From here he goes out, he recruits 60 men, brings them back, and he starts training them, and he is training them to be actual professional soldiers, and he's a stickler at heart, so he's making sure they're in their right uniform, right place, right time. They have to be well shaved, they have to have a nice haircut, the whole 9 yards. He's kind of a dick about it, people find him hard to be around, but hey, it is what it is. So he gets the boys trained up, and then by September...
Apt. Very, very apt, I would say. Wouldn't you?
of 1775, they get their first mission. The South Carolina militia is going to go out to James Island outside of Charleston, South Carolina, and they're going to capture a British fort on that island known as Fort Johnson. Francis Marion and another 150 guys from the South Carolina militia roll up to Fort Johnson. There's a small British garrison there. They're vastly outnumbered. They basically open up the gates to the fort and surrender immediately. And this is the first time that one of America's first early flags, the Moultrie flag or the Liberty flag, is raised over what was property of the British Crown. So now the British are pissed. They got to send a message. Fast forward June of 1776, the British show back up with a massive fleet and like 2,200 infantrymen. They are going to make a landing on Sullivan's Island, which basically controls the port to Charleston, the biggest port in the area. And Francis Marion is in charge of the artillery battery at Fort Sullivan, guarding Sullivan's Island with 400 other militiamen going up against a British fleet with 2,000 soldiers. So right out of the gate, it's not looking great. So the militiamen start building fortifications, and they build fortifications at whatever they have readily accessible on hand, which at the time was palmetto trees. And at a glance, that doesn't appear to be a very good thing because palmetto trees aren't really trees. They're not made out of wood. They're palms. They're really light. It's basically like a big trunk of stringy fibers that are full of water. They're basically giant sponges, which doesn't sound like something great to try to hide behind while the British are shooting at you with cannons, but you'd be wrong.
Yeah, think about it. If they have a lot of water in them, what is something that forensics uses for ballistics? What do they shoot a gun into in order to retrieve a bullet? No, not that it just bounces off. It would absorb it. Think about it. These palm trees are, effectively speaking, like a rudimentary combination between ballistics gel and a water tank. Take ballistics gel and a water tank and combine them. You kind of have these things. You've got the substance of the ballistics gel, but you also have the viscosity of water with the water drenched internal fibers, and it would absorb the rounds. And you gotta remember, these are like Revolutionary War style muskets. They're not pushing these rounds out as fast as modern day ballistics would. So yeah, and you also have the fibers that would also catch and absorb the impact, kind of like modern day bulletproof vests. So you have a three combo. You have the outer shell, which may not be anything big. You have the water internals, like the water soaked fibers on the internals. So the internals is essentially is like Kevlar soaked in a water tank. It actually could work really fucking good.
Because once the Battle of Sullivan's Island kicks off, what they find out is palmetto trees are fucking awesome for fortifications, because once the British cannons start hitting these fortifications, they don't react the same way that normal wood logs do. Normally, when a wood log gets hit by a cannon, it blows up and shrapnel and wood splinters fly everywhere, killing and wounding soldiers. But when the British cannons hit these palmetto logs, because they're basically giant sponges, they just hit and sink into the wood, and there's no shrapnel, nothing.
Hey, guess what?
So the British cannon fire is all but ineffective. Meanwhile, Francis Marion's artillery battery is able to hit the British ships. So right out of the gate, by pure luck or divine intervention or whatever you want to call it with these palmetto trees, things are going great right up until they're not, because Francis Marion's artillery battery runs out of black powder, probably because nobody assumed they would last long enough to use that much black powder. Now at this point, the South Carolina militia has already punched way above their weight. Nobody would fault them on being like, we're black on ammo, we gotta surrender, we gotta retreat. Whatever, but Francis Marion, the main character, he's not about it. He grabs a group of guys, leads them back into Charleston, acquires more black powder for his artillery batteries, brings it back, and keeps the fight going until they sink a British frigate, which ultimately leads to the British being forced to retreat and victory for the colonials at Sullivan's Island, thanks to Francis Marion being able to acquire more black powder and the luck or divine intervention of using spongy palm trees for fortifications. Okay, a couple of things. Francis Marion is given a lot of credit for a lot of things that he does later on. He's not given much credit for his actions on Sullivan's Island, being the guy that led the party that got more black powder and literally kept the fight going. Like, Francis Marion isn't even mentioned on the Sullivan's Island Wikipedia page. Somebody go fix that. The palmetto trees, on the other hand, are pretty much given all the credit for victory at Sullivan's Island, which, you know, fair, they did play a major role. But the cool part about that is that's actually why there's a palmetto tree on the South Carolina state flag today. As you can see, it's basically the Moultrie flag or the Liberty flag. They just took the word liberty out of the crescent in the corner and then slapped a palmetto tree on.
That's awesome. Like, I love that. I love that. That is how you honor the history of your state. That right there. That is how you fucking do it right. Is you honor the greatness that was your state's history. That is fucking amazing. I love this. I love every fucking thing about this. They're honoring not only the first flag used by the colonial, fledgling colonial United States, but the palm tree that was used, the palmetto tree that was used in one of the unsung battles, the first victories of the Revolutionary War. Like, this is how you do state pride right. Fuck, I'm choking up about this. I'm getting choked up about this. It's just amazing. More states need to be doing this. More states need to do this, where you actually honor your state's history and the history of the country in which it was a part of. More states need to do this.
Look at that. We're learning South Carolina state history. Moving on. After the victory at Sullivan's Island, the British basically abandoned military operations in the South for like the next 3 years. They figure they're just going to go up into the northern colonies, track down George Washington, crush his army in the rebellion right out of the gate. That's their plan. Doesn't really work out. They surround George Washington multiple times, and every single time he somehow manages to slip away at the last possible second. During this period of time, Francis Marion is serving in the Continental Army, first as a captain, then a major, then a lieutenant colonel. But like I said, they're basically in garrison. The British aren't down there. There's no fighting going on. He's just kind of training guys and doing whatever they're doing. But then in late 1779, all of that changes because the British have basically come to the conclusion they're not going to be able to catch and crush George Washington. They need to adopt a new strategy, and they adopt what is known as the Southern Strategy. Brief, oversimplified version of what this means. Basically, they're going to return to the South in force, try to take over all of the Southern colonies. Then they're going to use that as a staging area to build up militias full of Americans that are sympathetic to the British Crown, and then march all those militias up north to help capture and crush the rebellion. In order to do that, they need to control supply lines. The best way to do that is to capture the major ports in the southern colonies, primarily Savannah and Charleston. So that's exactly what they do. In September of 1779, the British go in and they attack Savannah, Georgia. Francis Marion is there on the front line.
Thank you, Steve. Oh, and thank you, Cave Spider. Sorry, I missed yours. Thank you, Cave Spider. Thank you very much.
Lines fighting with his men. They put up a fight, but ultimately they lose, and Savannah is lost to the British. Marion and the rest of the men that survive retreat back to Charleston because that's obviously where the next battle is going to take place. Now, obviously, that battle isn't going to take place for a while because war is slow, especially in the 1700s when you don't have trucks and airplanes, so Francis Marion and his men are living outside or inside of Charleston for a period of time. And during this time, because Francis Marion's a high-ranking officer, he's going out to these, fancy officer parties with all the wealthy aristocrats in Charleston, and he kind of hates all of them. He's not big on drinking, not a big fan of it. Also would rather just, get ready to fight the British rather than having fancy dinner parties. You gotta remember, Francis Marion is like a hardcore veteran at this point. He has seen all kinds of combat. He has seen the worst that people and warfare has to offer, and he knows that more of it is coming. He wants to get ready, and now he's stuck at this stupid fancy dinner party with a bunch of hoity-toity rich people sitting around gossiping, and he hates it.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. It's always the war fighters always get stuck dealing with the highfalutin officers or the hoity-toity rich that don't have a sweet fucking clue what's actually happening and just want to basically enjoy, you know, the fruits of their wealth or authority. When the guys that actually do the fighting are like, listen, you dumb fuckers, we need to take this seriously. Shit's about to come down the pipe. We need to get ready. Let's lock and fucking load. Yeah.
Eventually, he's had enough. He can't take it anymore. He's like, fuck this, I'm leaving. The problem is at the time, it was a custom that it was seen as very rude to leave before the host of the dinner party.
Namikaze, thank you for the raid. Welcome in, raiders. How you doing? Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. We are just getting started on Nick's story about the swamp fox, Francis Marion. So we're only about like 20 minutes in. And we've still got another hour and 10 minutes left of it. So if you'd like to join us about the man who inspired Mel Gibson's character from The Patriot, please, won't you join us?
Party ended the evening. So what they would do a lot of the time is they would get everybody inside the house for the dinner party and the gossiping and all the bullshit, and then they would lock the doors so nobody could slip out and leave. So Francis Marion goes up into the second-story bathroom and jumps out the window. When he lands, he shatters his ankle.
Oh, damn it.
Okay, do you understand how ridiculous this is? Francis Marion has had Cherokee guerrilla fighters and the British military, the most powerful, well-trained, well-equipped military on the planet, all try to kill him, all of which weren't even able to scratch the guy, and he gets a significant injury breaking his ankle trying to escape gossiping with rich people. From here,
that just tells you the worst enemy imaginable to the average person is fucking high society. Nothing is more deadly, nothing will fuck your life over more than goddamn high society.
he basically gets medevaced out to a plantation in the country to recover from his injuries, and while he's out there recovering, Charleston gets attacked and falls to the British. By August of 1780, Francis Marion recovers, but obviously in the months previous, when Charleston fell, all of the men that were serving under him were either killed, captured, or disbanded and have since gone home, so now he's just one man again. So he goes from town to town raising his own little militia, gets 20 guys together, and then he hears that the American forces are sending down General Horatio Gates to confront the British and save the South. So Francis Marion grabs his group of 20 guys, a bunch of ragtag volunteers with no military experience, and rides north and offers his services to General Horatio Gates. And Gates is gearing up to have a major confrontation with the British at what would come to be known as the Battle of Camden, so in theory, he could use all the help he could get. Despite that, when Francis Marion shows up, Gates takes one look at him. He's like a 40-some-odd-year-old farmer. He's 5'4". He's 115, 120 pounds, and he's got 20 volunteers with him that have no military experience, no uniforms, look like they've been sleeping in the woods because they have. And he's like, no, I'm not interested. You want to help with the war? Head down to the Santee River and, like, I don't know, burn some British boats or something. Just go be a pain in their ass, not mine. Fuck off. Is basically what happened.
Remember, something to note is a lot of the Continental Army right now, the fledgling Continental Army, just remember, a lot of them were not using guerrilla tactics. They were not war fighters. They were not, SF like Marion was, like Francis Marion was. They were still operating under the military doctrine of the British. So for them, it was still, which those of you that watch The Patriot during movie night, they were still doing that same, trying to fight honorably, doing the British military doctrine of everybody get in a line, march up until you get close. First line, take aim and fire, then fall back to reload. Second line approaches, takes aim and fire. They were basically parroting the British military tactics, whereas Francis Marion was not. Francis Marion was not there to basically do the gentlemanly way of waging war. He was there to fucking win, and he knew how to do it. So the general, he approaches a general, again, who is using the British military doctrine to engage war, looks at Francis Marion is like, there's no way that these guys are going to be able to form up and, and have the military discipline to engage ranks like I need them to, because those are how my tactics are. Hence why he probably said, fuckity bye, go do something else.
And Horatio Gates has absolutely no idea that he has just inadvertently started the series of events that would lead to Francis Marion becoming one of the most important men in the American Revolution and America's patron saint of guerrilla warfare.
Here we go.
So Francis Marion heads back down south of the river, just like he was ordered to do. Every time he's passing through a town, he's stopping at the taverns, he's picking up more guys to join his militia. Within a couple of days, he's built up a force.
So you'll notice, like, this was. So you notice there's some stuff that's been skipped over. Like, he's based, Mel Gibson's character is based on it, but you have to remember Mel Gibson's character is an amalgamation of 2 or 3 legendary war heroes from the Revolutionary War. So for those of you that are wondering, like, wait a minute, what happened to his house being burned down and then going after the British, and therefore, him getting involved in the war when originally he didn't want to be involved in the war. You have to remember, it's that was the story. That part of the story is from someone else. So if it seems like if you're thinking the Patriot, and you're like thinking, well, geez, we're skipping ahead of a lot. Yeah, Marion, Morgan, and Sumter. So if it seems like we're skipping ahead in the story that I know from the Patriot, that's why. Is you have to remember, this is an amalgamation of like 3 different stories that all turned into the Patriot. Just in case there's any confusion.
He's stopping at the taverns, he's picking up more guys to join his militia. Within a couple of days, he's built up a force of like 70 guys. The problem is, they're all dudes that he's pulling out of the bars, right? So like, they don't really have guns, or if they do have guns, they don't have much ammunition, they don't have sabers, they don't have uniforms, they're ill-equipped. He basically has nothing. First order of business, we gotta get the boys some weapons, and those are in short supply pretty much everywhere right now. So Francis Marion goes to a bunch of blacksmiths and sawmills and takes the old saw blades out of the sawmills and has the blacksmiths recraft them into swords. Okay, right out of the gate, Francis Marion is doing like colonial era Mad Max shit. He's about to get aggressive. And that's
Damn it, Nick, you had an opportunity here. You had an opportunity here. We're talking about a historical figure that is one of the basis for the Mel Gibson character, the Patriot, and now he's saying that Francis Marion is doing some Mad Max shit. Who played Mad Max again? You had the opportunity here, Nick. You could have said, it makes perfect sense that Mel Gibson would have played him in the movie, considering he was Mad Max also. Damn, Nick, you had an opportunity here.
exactly what he does. He's got his men living out in the swamps. They're launching successful raids on these British supply ships in the river.
Might as well throw in a Martin Riggs reference. I mean, Riggs was Special Forces. Holy shit. Like, Mel Gibson is... Okay, hold up. You're absolutely right. Mel Gibson played a character of part of which is based on Francis Marion, who is doing Mad Max shit, which Mel Gibson played, who is also one of the country's first special forces people, which was Riggs. Mel Gibson is literally the fucking goat of historical figures all rolled into fucking one. The 5 heroes? Yeah, 5 heroes, yeah. Yes. Time and reality is cyclical, chat. Just don't forget that.
Exactly what he does. He's got his men living out in the swamps. They're launching successful raids on these British supply ships in the river, and then British patrols ramp up, and they are like trying to hunt down Francis Marion and his guys. Like a disproportionate amount of attention is now getting paid to Francis Marion. They're not able to find him because he's hiding all his guys in the swamp, but Francis Marion is like, okay, something something's going on. Like, I'm being a pain in the ass to these guys, but I should not be getting this much attention. This is disproportionate. And then he finds out why, because apparently a couple days prior, the Battle of Camden had in fact happened, and America was dealt a crushing defeat. So presumably the British believe that Francis Marion and his men are just the leftover resistance of men that like fled the battlefield at the Battle of Camden, and they're just combing the countryside trying to clean everything up. Now, just so we're on the same page, the Battle of Camden was like America's last stand in the Southern Theater. Once Horatio Gates' army was defeated, that was it. As far as the American government and the British were concerned, the Southern strategy was a huge victory for the British. They had effectively driven the rebellion out of the South. Everybody was either unaware that Francis Marion was still in play, or they just completely disregarded it, because at the end of the day, what's one 48-year-old farmer gonna do against the most powerful, well-supplied military in the world, right? Well, they're about to find.
Hold up. Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. I need to research something really quick. Hang on 1 second. I need to research something. This is complete, like, off the rails, you know, side tangent thing. Again.
Do against the most powerful, well-supplied military in the world, right? Well, play, or they just completely disregarded it, because at the end of the day, what's one 48-year-old farmer
48 years old. Mel Gibson was 44 when he made the movie. Holy shit! This is getting a little scary, if I'm gonna be real. This is getting kind of fucking scary. The red strings me. It's like, it almost feels like Mel Gibson was literally born to play the role he played in The Patriot. It's almost like he was born to play it. Probably part of the reason we got, maybe, I don't know. But like, holy shit!
Gonna do against the most powerful, well-supplied military in the world, right? Well, they're about to find out.
Don't really remember how many. Maybe one.
And this is really where we get to see Francis Marion become the main character of this part of the Revolutionary War. Again, Mel Gibson's character in the movie The Patriot is based off of Francis Marion, but it's never intended to be like historically accurate or completely based on true events. So in the movie, Mel Gibson's character is deeply traumatized by what he saw in the French and Indian War. They capture that part correctly. That part is accurate.
How tall is Mel Gibson? Okay, let's find out. That is an excellent question. Okay, we need to find out. Are we about to get... I think he's like 5'8". I want to say he's 5'7" or 5'8". He's 5'9". Okay, he's 5'9". So he is significantly taller than Francis Marion. So okay, that kind of kills that. Okay.
But then in the movie, they use that as basically Mel Gibson's character's reasoning for not wanting to go to war. He knows how brutal war is because he's seen it, and he wants to do everything to avoid it.
There are alternatives to war.
That is not how Francis Marion gets down in real life. Francis Marion is a hardcore revolutionary. He wants to fight, and he wants to fight right now. He's still traumatized by his experience in the French and Indian War, but he's using that as like, hey, I'm not gonna take it out on women and children and innocent people. If they're an active combatant, we're fucking. Okay, I need you to appreciate how truly insane this is. Francis Marion has just received word that the conventional army has just been defeated, and he's like, cool, I'm still gonna go fight the British with 70 dudes that I picked up at a bar and armed them with saw blades. We have no ammunition, we have very few guns. I'm still gonna take the fight to the British. Like, really, put yourself...
As a reminder, the formation of the United States happened in a bar. Just as a reminder, the founding fathers all got together and said, we're a nation in a bar. Oh. All the greatest decisions, all of the greatest moments in the history of the United States start in a fucking bar. Yes, the Marines do. I know the Marines started in a bar too, but I was thinking like the founding fathers all basically came up with the idea of the Constitution and being their own nation in a bar. They like the unsub, like Nick actually got like the bar bill for the founding fathers when they basically decided we're now a country. It all started in a bar. And Quackpods, thank you for the prime. Thank you very much.
In his shoes, imagine that America got invaded by some massive military force, I don't know, like Russia or China or whatever, and Russia or China somehow defeated the United States Army and the United States Marine Corps and drove them back, forced them to retreat, and there was some random 48-year-old farmer that got 70 dudes together from a bar with no equipment and said, you know what? The Army and the Marine Corps couldn't pull it off. I'm gonna go get it done. That is a delusional level of self-confidence. And this is really where we also start to see not only Francis Marion's guerrilla warfare tactics come into play, but his leadership skills from everything that he had learned from the French and Indian War, because he remembers how important morale is, especially when you're dealing with guerrilla fighters that aren't professional soldiers. And because of that, he realizes that these guerrilla fighters are gonna be prone to losing their morale and just going home. So Francis Marion decides he's not gonna tell his guys that they had lost at the Battle of Camden. He is going to keep that to himself and continue on with the mission. So at this point, Francis Marion has his 70 guys. They're all hiding out in the swamps in South Carolina. He's just got this news. He's decided he's going to keep it to himself. He's going to continue the fight anyways. And then that night, something amazing happened. Literally, fate steps in because a British officer by himself wanders into their camp. So they immediately capture this guy, they interrogate him, they find out he's a British officer, they find out that he's alone going through the swamp because he's actively deserting his military post, and then they pump him for more information. They also find out that the British have taken over a plantation not too far from where they're at, and at that plantation is 150 American POWs that were captured at the Battle of Camden that are currently being guarded by somewhere between 35 and 60 British redcoats. And they're
Wait, is this the part of the Patriot where he goes in and pretends like that and basically says, give me my troops, or I'm going to kill your officers up there on the hill, and basically like trolls the general? I love this scene. Oh, I fucking love this scene.
Not going to be there long because they're currently being escorted to prison ships. So presumably Francis Marion's doing the mental math like, I got more men, I got 70 guys, they got 60 guys at most, I have the element of surprise. If I can go in there, free these 150 POWs, that's another 150, not just guys, but trained soldiers that are going to join my ranks. This could be a huge deal if I can get these guys freed, and he decides that's what he's going to go do. Okay, and that sounds like a great idea, but again, I need you to appreciate how truly crazy Francis Marion and this as a whole is. A hostage rescue mission is the most complicated, difficult mission imaginable. Okay, if this was modern times and there were hostages being held at a big house surrounded by armed gunmen, they would be sending in like Delta Force or SEAL Team 6, the best of the best, most well-trained, well-equipped operators that America has to offer. And Francis Marion is about to go take this mission on with a bunch of dudes that he picked up from a bar. So that night, Francis Marion wakes his guys up at midnight and is like, come on, we got a mission to go do. They take off, they get near this plantation. Francis Marion basically sets up a small patrol base, and from here, rather than just storming in guns blazing and blind, he sends out a couple of different elements of scouts to get a lay of the land. They go out, they gather the intel, they report back to him, at which point Francis Marion determines the most likely spot that the British are going to send reinforcements is at this passing at Horse Creek, which is right near this plantation. So he sends out 16 guys being led by a guy by the name of Hugh Horry to go set up a blocking position at this bridge in case British reinforcements do show up, they're going to stall them. Okay, and again, this is absolutely insane. To have the foresight and know-how in the 1700s to move your element close to the objective, set up a patrol base, send out scouts, gather intelligence, determine the most likely spot that reinforcements are going to show up, and send men out into a blocking position are advanced level small unit infantry tactics that aren't doctrine. This is not common sense at this point in time. It's not going to be developed for another 100 years, and Francis Marion is doing it right out of the gate. He is immediately proving that he is the Delta Force operator of his day. So Hugh...
Thank you! Thank you! This is what I was saying. He literally was one of the first SF Delta operatives of the United States. There we go. That's exactly what I was saying.
Corey and his 16 guys get out to this bridge on this blocking position. Francis Marion and the rest of the main element sneak around the backside of the plantation. They're going to launch their assault from the rear. While Hugh Horry and his guys are out at this bridge, a British sentry comes by patrolling and fires a shot at him. They take care of the sentry, but immediately Hugh Horry has a fucking conundrum on his hand because he has to make a gameplay decision, and they don't have radios for him to take orders. He's just going to have to go with his gut. Option A, he can do nothing. He can just hope that the British heard one gunshot and either don't pay attention to it or think that it was a fluke, or maybe they didn't hear it at all and everything's going to go according to plan. But if they did hear it and all the British inside the house go, they grab their guns and now they're waiting for some type of attack, Francis Marion and his men are going to walk face first into an enemy in a fortified fighting position, and they're going to get destroyed in this battle. Now you got to remember, this is the 1700s. On top of that, a lot of militaries still have this doctrine today where if you're a lower enlisted soldier and you aren't an officer and you don't have active orders, your plan is to sit there, bed down, and wait for somebody to come get you with a battle plan. That's what most people would do. But Hugh Horry and his men are Americans, and we don't play that shit. When things go sideways, we just default to being aggressive.
Yes.
So as far as Hugh Horry's concerned, as soon as that musket went off, this battle has officially started, and he has opted to go with America's tried and true plan B, brute force and ignorance. He grabs his men and orders them to charge the front of the plantation immediately. So they all take off running. As they approach the front of this plantation, they see something incredible. For whatever reason, the British had decided that they were going to leave all of their muskets staged outside the front door of the plantation. They immediately run up to the front door. They now have all the British guys' weapons. They kick down the front door, and within a matter of seconds, on the other side of the plantation, by sheer coincidence, Francis Marion launches his attack as well, and now the plantation is simultaneously being hit from the front and the rear, and the British are completely disarmed. Now, to be completely intellectually honest, I have no idea exactly what unfolded once they both hit the house at the same time. These guys weren't rocking GoPros back then, but if they were, I like to imagine it would be a montage of the coolest colonial era CQB house clearing I've ever seen. Because within a matter of minutes,
see, this is where Nick needed to get the what's that game that came out? There's that game that came out recently where you basically can fight in colonial wars. Not ready or not. Like it's legitimately like hold fast. Yeah. This is where, to prepare for this, Nick and all of the unsub guys should have gotten hold fast, set something up in hold fast where Nick like busts in through a door with his character and does like CQB like get on the fucking ground, get underground, and have all unsub guys in there too. And just be a cacophony of glorious aggression with hold fast because it period accurate. And then just like taking that video footage and inserted that after he said that line. That would have been fucking perfect if he'd been able to do that. Nick, I'm telling you, for just about every single historical figure that you are going to, every single historical military figure that you are going to talk about, there is a game out there that you can get that you can basically recreate some of these battles with the authentic weapons that you can then just create the battle and then just insert the footage into your videos for just glorious, hysterical chaos. And it would be fucking amazing. There are actual regiments that would have loved to do that. Yeah, if Nick literally just put out the word, like on Twitter, hey, I need X amount of people to like help me make something in this game, you know, get a server going and to create this scene. He could do it, and it would be amazing for him to just inject that into the videos to give like an actual visual representation of what happened. It would be incredible. Nick, I don't know if you watched my shit. I don't know if you watch my videos, but if you do, you can have this idea free of charge. It is all yours. Talk to Badger. Talk to Russian Badger. He does this for a living with games. Like, you guys could do some absolutely insane visual graphicking and just this could be so amazing for you to put into your videos. Please, this would just be too epic for words.
The entire thing is over. 2 British are dead, 5 are wounded, the rest are taken prisoner, and they have recovered 147 POWs. And Francis Marion has 2 men that were wounded and none that were killed. This mission was perfect. It was flawless. If this happened in modern day, Francis Marion and Hugh Horry would both be getting Medals of Honor or Distinguished Service Crosses. And everybody else on the mission would probably be getting a Bronze Star. So now Francis Marion's excited. He's thinking, I just went from 70 unskilled, untrained guys to now I got a new 150 soldiers that are actually trained. I might be able to really do something here. And then when he goes to talk to the POWs, only 3 of them out of 147 are willing to join him. 85 of them say they would prefer going and sitting in a British prison for the rest of the American Revolution because they are so utterly demoralized that they would rather just go serve their prison sentence than run the risk of getting caught by the British. And the rest of them just go back home. And I think from Francis Marion's perspective, this really just drives home what he already knew. This entire war is about optics and morale and keeping the men motivated.
Well, and you say, like, even after that rescue, again, like Nick said it, it's demoralizing. These, like, men in war can be broken down simply by being in war. Don't forget, these guys were on a major losing side. Up to this point, all of these men that had been captured, they were captured because, by and large, they have been getting steamrolled by the British. That is incredibly demoralizing. It was, it's the David and Goliath scenario, only Goliath is stomping your ass. And they have been on the receiving end of this stomping. So you can't fault them because when you're getting just beaten down at every turn, that can break you mentally. It absolutely can. Like we can sit here in the comfort of our homes in 2026 and go, oh, come on, they should have fought. They should have gotten up and they should have fought. That's not how it works today in war, and that's not how it works back then in the late 1700s either. Yeah, they're mostly volunteers, and they have suffered crushing defeat after crushing defeat. Don't forget, the British have basically taken the South. So that is incredibly demoralizing. In their eyes, they're like, this is a war that can't be won. To them, they're thinking, we are on a losing side. There is no way that we're going to be able to win. And so why should I just they would rather either fuck off home or go sit in a British prison cell because at least then they may not die. Because they think that at this point, if you fight against the British, you are probably going to die. So it's honestly, it's not wholly unexpected that so many of them be like, fuck this shit, I'm out. I don't want to have anything to do with this. They've already gotten a significant taste of what they were up against, and they were scared. Rightly so, they were scared. So it's like, I don't fault these guys. It's disappointment for Francis Marion. Of course, he was thinking, I'm going to be able to get a fucking army out of this. And what he got is he got an army that was beaten down and demoralized and basically taken out of the fight. Which happens. That absolutely happens.
So from here, Francis Marion just goes back to what he was doing. He's still sending people out into towns, trying to recruit, trying to drive up morale for the Patriot cause. He's still launching, minor attacks on British supply lines, but nothing really major is going on. However, probably unbeknownst to him, he has just become public enemy number 1 as far as the British are concerned. You gotta remember, General Cornwallis, the guy in charge of this southern campaign, has basically told them, hey, we defeated the rebels at Kansas. We own the South now. It's all taken care of. And everybody's like, oh, what a great job Cornwallis did. And now he has to go back to his bosses and be like, oh, by the way, somebody attacked a plantation, took out a bunch of our troops, took them prisoner, and then freed 150 rebels. He has just went from, hey, the job is done, to what the fuck is going on over there? Obviously, you don't have this situation under control.
That man insults me.
So from here, the British just start throwing everything they have at Francis Marion. The problem is they're throwing blind because nobody knows where this guy is at. He's out in the swamps of South Carolina somewhere. Obviously, they're sending out Tory militias. If you don't know, a Tory is just like an American that's sympathetic to the British cause and is siding with the British. There's militias of those guys roaming around looking for Francis Marion. There's conventional army units, but in addition to that, they also send out half a dozen death squads led by some of their best field officers with their best soldiers trying to track down Francis Marion. Two of these officers are the infamous Bannister Tarleton and the lesser-known James Weems. And these two guys are the inspiration for the main bad guy in the movie The Patriot. You know, the one portrayed by Malfoy's dad? Yeah, he's an amalgamation of Bannister Tarleton and James Weems. And again, one of the things the movie The Patriot does get right is these guys go on a brutal warpath to basically trick Francis Marion into coming out of hiding by taking it out on the local civilians. They burn down houses, they burn down crops, they kill livestock, and even the burning down of a Presbyterian church was real. That actually happened. To be fair, they didn't fill it.
Wait. Hang on, let's see that.
The burning down of a Presbyterian church.
See, Indiana Town Presbyterian Church, organized in 1757 with John James and Robert Wilson, is founded by the elders, burned by the British in 1780 as a sedition shop, rebuilt after the Revolution. Present building began in 1830, remodeled in 1919. Major John James, Revolutionary hero, is buried in the churchyard.
Was real. That actually happened. To be fair, they didn't fill it with everybody in the town first and burn it down like they did in the movie The Patriot, but they still burned down the church and were running around burning down everything, destroying people's lives. Now remember, Francis Marion has a pretty long history of not liking this shit. He didn't like it in the Cherokee War when they were doing it to his enemies. He definitely isn't going to like it when they're doing it to his people of South Carolina, and neither are any of his men. So now Francis Marion is pissed off and more motivated than he was originally, and all of his men's morale are at an all-time high. They all want revenge. So on September 4th, 1780, when there's a Tory militia of 250 men sympathetic to the British in his area of operation, it's go time. Bear in mind, Francis Marion still only has like 70 guys, and he's about to go up against 250, but at least this time they're not professional soldiers. They're militiamen just like his guys. The difference is they're not being led by Francis Marion. So Francis Marion does what he always does. He sends out scouting elements, gets intel back at what's going on. The Tories are headed his direction with 250 men. 200 are in a rear element with 50 and a forward guard leading the group. Francis Marion immediately comes up with a brilliant plan, makes sure that they're coming right towards this swamp. Once they get close enough to the swamp, he sends out his 70 guys and confronts this forward element of 50 Tories directly, which makes him look like an idiot because he's attacking a forward element and he probably doesn't know that there's another 200 guys that are going to rush in and help. So it looks like he's falling into the British trap. His guys go in, they kill 30 out of the 50 of this forward element, and then when the reinforcements start showing up, they all fake a retreat back into the swamp. So now the British are thinking, oh, he didn't know that we had 200 men in reserve. We've got him on the ropes. We're going to chase him down and squash these guys right now. And they follow Francis Marion, aka the Swamp Fox, into the fucking swamp.
Yes. Follow him right into his own fucking backyard. This will be glorious.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally?
Obviously, this does not go how they had hoped. They promptly get ambushed inside of the swamp and are forced to retreat. When it's all said and done, Francis Marion and his militia have just confronted a force nearly 4 times the size of theirs, killed a significant portion of them, and in exchange only lost 4 men and 2 horses. And this actually turns out to be the turning point that Francis Marion originally thought the hostage rescue was going to be, where he was going to bolster his numbers. Because when you look at the overall bigger picture, you've got Bannister, Tarleton, and Weems running around the countryside, burning down people's houses because they may or may not be helping the rebel cause. And then you have some colonials that are sympathetic to the British going out and confronting Francis Marion about it, and him kicking their ass even though they have him outnumbered 4-1. So when the civilian population sees and hears about this, they're like, oh, not only is this guy the main character and a humongous badass, he's the guy that's fighting the guys that are roaming around the countryside, burning down our houses and crops. We want to help that guy. So now, not only does he have the support of the local population that now wants to help him get food, supplies, water, ammunition, he also, the very next day on August 5th, has 60 more men come and join his militia. So this is a complete game changer. Now Francis Marion has essentially doubled the size of his militia. He is better supplied. He has sympathy from the local population. And even if the local population isn't willing to directly help him by giving him food, ammunition, supplies, or serving in his militia, they're still willing to help him by giving him information. Basically, the entire countryside is now his spy network, so to speak. And this is actually crucially important important because Francis Marion, while he is excited, he's, getting momentum behind him, he's stacking up victories, he's still very conscious of how important morale is. A single loss could be a crushing loss and send this entire house of cards crumbling to the ground. So he needs this information so that he can pick and choose his fights to ensure victory every single time, because a single loss could be the final loss. In the coming weeks, Francis Marion makes the most of his newfound support. He's getting new men, he's getting supplies, he's getting everything he can, including information. And some of this information is that there is a Tory militia held up at a place called Red Tavern about 50 miles down the road.
Another bar!
Game on. Okay, this is going to be a cakewalk. We've ambushed the British before while they were inside of a structure. This time, we have superior numbers, we're better supplied, and they don't even have hostages we have to worry about this time. It should be easy. Important context, though. Francis Marion does have like 100, 110 guys under his command at this point in time, but remember, they're militia. These are guerrilla fighters. Some guys are always, going home to help with stuff, going home to check on things. He also has to start leaving some men behind to guard supplies. He has other men out on other missions like doing surveillance, scouting operations, all kinds of stuff. So he's not bringing 100, 110 men to this fight. He's bringing somewhere between 60 and 70. But that should still be plenty because according to his intel, the Tory militia only has about 50 guys there. So if he's bringing 70, he's going to have superior numbers. On top of that, he has the element of surprise. And we also can't discount the fact that these, again, are not professional British soldiers. They're militia just like him. He should be able to mop this up pretty quick. So Marion and his guys make their way towards this tavern. They're going to launch their assault at night. They're going to take him by surprise. The same game plan as before. If it's not broke, don't fix it. As they're approaching the Red Tavern, they have to cross this creek. There's a little bridge there going over the creek, and all of his men are on horseback at this point. And as they're crossing the bridge on horseback, apparently the horse's hooves on this wooden bridge make a shit ton of noise and alert the British that they're there. Now, some historians argue that this is overhyped and that the noise on the bridge wouldn't have alerted the British to set it up, and they think that there was, a bunch of British spies that were also feeding intel that Marion was in the area. It was probably a conglomeration of the two. Dead Warrior Society also agrees with me on this, that, yes, they were probably alerted by their spy network that Francis Marion was in the area, so they were already on high alert. And then when they hear all these horses crossing the bridge at night of 70 dudes on 70 horses, oh shit, Francis Marion's here. So unbeknownst to Francis Marion and his men, all the British exit the tavern and go out and hide in a field near the tavern and stage an ambush. Francis Marion's guys walk right into this ambush. They receive a huge volley from this field where they weren't expecting the enemy to be, and they immediately start retreating. Francis Marion immediately leaves.
Hey, so that's where the inspiration for this scene came from. Okay.
Leaps into action, splits his force in two, has half of them reform up and start laying down suppressing fire on the enemy, while he takes the other half and orders them around in a flanking maneuver and crushes the British position in a matter of minutes. Again, Francis Marion showing what a tactical genius he is. He has basically just pulled off a platoon-size element react to contact maneuver with a bunch of men that have never drilled it and don't even know what it is. But under his leadership, they're able to execute it and get the job done live in a real firefight. When the smoke settles, three members of the Tory...
No. Not fuck it. That's the appropriate response.
Militia have been killed, 13 have been wounded, some of them get captured, and the rest flee. Now, that doesn't sound very impressive, like, oh, you killed 3 of the enemy, like, big whoop, what a big deal, but it is a big deal because, like I said before, this war at this point in time, from Francis Marion's perspective, isn't about crushing and annihilating your enemy. Remember, these are Tories. These are people that live in South Carolina. This war is about establishing higher morale. And you do that through victories, forcing the enemy to retreat, and then treating the people that you've defeated well, because you want everybody to realize, oh, you're the good guys. You're not going to burn my house down or execute the prisoners that you take on the battlefield. If you're able to do that, you've demonstrated, oh, you're morally superior. On top of that, you're able to beat the enemy on the battlefield. You must be the good guy. You're who I want to side with. You're who I want to support. So
it's basically the modern day version of Hearts and Minds. Yes, exactly. That's exactly where I was going to. Yeah, this is basically Hearts and Minds, but done correctly. Unlike what has been happening in the sandbox for umpteen decades that has not fucking worked. This is Hearts and Minds done correctly. And obviously, highly effective.
So while taking out 3 enemies doesn't seem like a huge deal, this is actually the best type of victory that Francis Marion can possibly get. On top of that, they capture a bunch of supplies that the Tories had, and they also capture the Tory militia leader General Ball's horse that Francis Marion takes as his own and names Ball. And here's the kicker, 5 members of this Tory militia, including the second in command, all offer to join Francis Marion's militia. Okay, which sounds weird when you're thinking about warfare in the modern sense. Like, at no point would, an American soldier get defeated in battle and then, like, join ISIS or the Taliban. But this is a completely different thing.
Okay, you know what just popped into my head when he was saying that? This is gonna sound crazy. How many of you guys how many of you guys have seen any of Russian Badger's videos about Payday? Have you guys seen any of Badger's videos about that? For when he played Payday 2? Where it's that there's this one scene in Badger's video for Payday 2 where he talks about like capturing, they talk about like capturing the SWAT guys and then turning them onto your side. It's like, you come on our side, they'll get this cheese sandwich, and the response is, "Oh, you about to make me act up." I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact quote. That's exactly what I was just thinking. That Badger skit where he's like, Badger's voice and the SWAT guy going, "Oh, you about to make me act up." Isn't the Duke one? Yeah, it was the Duke video. That's immediately what I just thought of.
The Tory militia, these are colonials. These are people that also live in South Carolina that joined a British militia.
The burrito
and they
one?
might have
Okay.
not joined it because they wanted to. They might have joined this militia because that was the only way they could prove to the British that they weren't part of the rebellion and they didn't want to get their fucking house burned down. So it stands to reason that a lot of these guys potentially aren't even sympathetic or even like the British. They were just doing it because they don't want to get fucked with by the British, and they didn't know how to go out and join Swamp Fox because that's kind of his whole thing. He's hiding in the swamp. And again, it all circles back to morale because I can't think of anything more impactful to morale, to like the civilian population, than seeing a bunch of young men join the British militia, march off to combat, lose, and then find out that a bunch of them actually joined the other team. Also, another side fact isn't really important to the story, but I thought it was cool and demonstrates how Francis Marion's always learning and then implementing what he learns. After the whole horses on the bridge debacle making noise, Francis Marion made it the standard operating procedure for his guys. Whenever they crossed a bridge, they would wrap the horses' hooves in fabric, or they would have somebody go ahead first and put blankets down so they didn't make noise when they were crossing a bridge.
Oh, nice.
All right, so at this point, Francis Marion has just had victory at the Red Tavern, also known as the Battle of Black Mingo Creek. Got to decide the next thing to do. He's got to do something big. He's got a ton of momentum. All the guys are motivated. This is his chance to really make an impact. And you know what's pretty close to Black Mingo Creek? Georgetown. This is a major port city. It's under the control of the British. He grew up there when he was a kid. Somebody should probably go in there and do something about that. So Francis Marion pretty much immediately travels another 20 miles down the road, heads into Georgetown, and when he shows up, the British basically run and hide inside of a fortress that they have inside of Georgetown. At this point, Francis Marion goes in and is like, okay, surrender. And the British are hiding inside this fort, and they're like, no, we're not going to surrender. So Francis Marion is like,
okay,
all right. Can't really do anything about that. Don't have cannons, don't have any siege equipment, don't want to sit here and try to starve you guys out. This doesn't look good. And you got to remember, I'm going to say it again because I can't stress it enough. Everything about Francis Marion's war that he's fighting right now is all about morale and optics to the public. Now that optically looks great. It appears as though the British are scared of this guy, but now the ball is in Francis Marion's court. He can't just ride into town, have the British tell him no, and then walk away with his tail between his legs because then he looks bad. So he's got a couple of options. One, he could try to, lay siege to this fort. Like I already said, not really an option. Option B, he could steal all of their shit while they hide and then dip, which is exactly what he does, which is brilliant. It was the most absolute perfect possible thing to do at the time, because from the view of the public, Francis Marion rolled into town with his guys. The British ran and hid in their fort while he stole all their shit and then dipped without so much as a scratch on him. He is literally showing the world, oh, the British military, the most powerful army on the planet? Yeah, they're scared of me and my band of farmers. I run this shit. I am this kingpin in South Carolina. Carolina. So Francis Marion strategically transfers a bunch of British equipment and horses to his alternate location in the swamp and dips out. From here, Francis Marion goes back to doing exactly what he was doing. He's chilling out in the swamp. He's sending guys out on scouting missions, gathering intel, trying to identify his next target. And in late October, he finds it. His scouts come back and they report that they've identified a Tory militia under the command of Samuel Tynes. It's about 200 guys that have just marched into the area of new recruits. They're planning on getting trained up out in the woods, and then they're going to go out and confront Francis Marion. Francis Marion figures, I'm going to go crash this party before it even starts. And if he can achieve victory here, not only is this going to bolster the morale of his men and all the people that already support him, it's going to demoralize the enemy. Like, oh, you're going to come into my AO, you're going to raise an army, you're going to try to confront me. I'm going to knock you down before you even get on your feet. And again,
let's be real. Every fucking op that Francis Marion has done at this point has been all about demoralizing the enemy. Like, exactly what Nick said. It's not like I'm saying something profound here. Nick has said it a couple times already. But it's like, since Francis Marion decided, oh, you want to fucking play that game? Okay, motherfuckers, let's play. The moment he made that decision, it's been all about, he has just nonstop demoralized the enemy. Every action he's taken has been yet another notch, has basically been lowering the morale of his enemy piece by piece by piece with every engagement. Because remember, at this stage, he still hasn't lost once. Every engagement that Francis Marion has partaken in against the British has been a victory. Every single one. Even in those when he freed the hostages and the hostages all basically just said, nah, I don't really want to do this, fuckity bye, and either went home or just, he got the 3 guys, but the other one's just like, I want to go home, and they went home. It was still a defeat of the British. It was still a demoralization of the British. And it was still a bolstering of morale for the Americans. The American people were seeing Francis Marion getting win after win after win. Even in those scenarios where it was like, oh, the British, like, they might have them with the sneak attack at Mingo Creek, where it's like, by all rights, they should have had them. They didn't, Francis Marion's army and troops did not know that they were hiding. They were hiding in the field. They had the drop on them. They still lost handily. They had this fort. They barricaded themselves in the fort. They were protected from Francis Marion. They still lost because Francis took all their shit and fucked off. Like, every engagement that he has partaken in against the British has been a victory in some way. He has yet to be defeated. Think about, A, how demoralizing that is to the British, and B, think of what a massive morale booster that is for not only his men, but the public. That is what it comes down to. When you increase morale, you increase the chances of victory. And holy crap, has he been increasing the chances of victory with morale. Yeah, he basically rolled up and said,
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
That was Francis Marion, right there. Alternatively, he rolled up on the British and simply just said,
I will send you to Jesus.
Sorry, new soundboards. I wanted to play with them.
Again, Francis Marion does not have 200 guys. At most, he has 150 under his command, but he probably doesn't have 150 at any given point because dudes are always out on separate missions. Dudes are always going back home to check on things. So we don't really know how many men he has, but we know for sure he's outnumbered. But again, he's got tactics and they don't know he's coming. And more importantly, like we've already established, every single time Francis Marion goes into battle, he gains more experience and is able to immediately apply it to the next battle. Now,
and point of note, if they're Tories, potentially he's also gaining men. That's something that's not a factor that's kind of being alluded to there, is if he's leading his men against fights against Tories, potentially speaking, when they every engagement that they win against them, when they take them prisoner, potentially they could be adding to their own number. That's also something to think about that Nick hasn't been mentioning. Now, I don't know how many they have been able to add into their number, but I'm guessing they might be able to be getting a couple here, getting a couple there. You know, again, doing the hearts and mind things properly.
Now remember, the Battle of Mingo Creek, the two things that went wrong were the horses were noisy on the bridge, and potentially there were spies that gave away his position. Okay, we've already addressed the horses on the bridge. What do we do about the spies potentially ratting him out and giving away that he's coming to get these guys? Francis Marion, in a stroke of genius, being 10 steps ahead of everybody at all times, has his men go out into the taverns and into towns and loudly talk and spread the rumor that Francis Marion and his militia are heading to a different part of the state in the other direction. So any intel the British get is going to be the exact opposite. These guys are going to be out there in the woods thinking they've got all day and tomorrow to train their troops up before they have to go track down Francis Marion, when in reality, he's coming for them.
So he's also using psychological warfare. He's also basically using like almost CIA tactics of spreading misinformation to fuck with the opposing forces.
October 25th, 1780, Francis Marion and his guys have tracked down the new Tory militia led by Samuel Tynes outside of Tearcoat Swamp. This time, Francis Marion goes back to the same playbook. They decide that they're going to attack at midnight when the enemy is least expecting it, and there's as few guards as possible, and everybody is sleeping. Except this time, there's no structure. There's nothing they got to worry about. These guys are out in an open field, so Francis Marion splits his guys up into 3 groups. He's got a group going right up the middle, then he's got 2 groups going around the outside in a flanking maneuver, and they're going to double envelop the enemy. They're going to absolutely crush them because they don't even know they're coming. He gets all of his men into position, then he signals for the attack to start by firing his pistol. All 3 units take off and converge on the target at the same exact time, absolutely crushing this militia. In a matter of minutes, 6 of them are dead, 14 of them are wounded, another 23 are captured, and the rest are scattered and running. And Marion didn't lose anybody. In fact, he actually gained people because some of the Tories turned around and joined his militia.
There we go. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Boom, there it is. Precisely what I'm talking about.
Instead, and then on top of that, he also gained a ton of new supplies by sacking this encampment. And again, taking out 6 enemies, capturing a handful, wounding another handful doesn't seem like a big earth-shattering thing, but he's just stacking up victory upon victory upon victory, and it just looks like nobody can oppose this dude. He is invincible. And every time he takes out a Tory militia, it makes it that much harder for any other Tory militia to pop up, because everybody's gonna go, no, I don't want to join a militia for the British because, you know, Francis Marion's guys are going to pop up out of the woods out of nowhere and kill me in my sleep. I'm good. I'd rather just stay home. And
what did I say? Is that not precisely what I just said? It's almost kind of like I know a few things.
While all these small victories seem like they could easily be insignificant in the grand scheme of things, they're not. Stacking up these small victories in South Carolina literally changed the entire trajectory of the Revolutionary War. Because at this point, Cornwallis is forced to abandon his plans to march further north and to go back and solely focus on getting South and North Carolina back under control. Francis Marion and his ragtag group of farmers stacking up these small victories has literally altered and ruined the plan of the most powerful military on the planet. And now they're going to have to figure out what to do about Francis Marion. And in the meantime, Francis Marion just goes on a tear of guerrilla warfare, launching raids all over the place. People are supporting him now. He's getting food, he's getting weapons, he's getting supplies. He's even got some Native American warriors coming and helping to fight with him from the Catawba Nation. And these Catawba warriors are training all these farmers how to fight like a Native American with guerrilla warfare tactics, how to, you know, take pop shots from the trees and disappear, how to fight with knives and tomahawks. And this is where, you know, the patriot character gets his tomahawk. Francis Marion was never known for carrying a tomahawk into battle, but his men did start doing it after they started working with these Catawba warriors.
Honestly, fucking based. Like, the tomahawk is such an underappreciated melee weapon. Like, me personally, I find the tomahawk to be one of the coolest and sexiest melee weapons of that out there. Yeah, there's a reason why that particular weapon is still utilized today, both as a tool and as a weapon. You think the tomahawk as a name is... Like, the tomahawk as a name is awesome. The tomahawk weapon itself I think is just absolutely fucking base. Absolutely based. It's still used by the military today. It's used by civilians. There's a reason why the tomahawk has endured for literal centuries. Literally centuries. That this is a weapon that has endured. Because it's fucking awesome.
By October of 1780, the British have decided how they're going to handle Francis Marion. They're basically going to redouble down on their efforts of actual British soldiers, the best of the best, being led by Bannister Tarleton and Weems, to go out and track him down. Previously, they were like, you know, be on the lookout for this 48-year-old farmer out in the woods with some other dudes. Now it is like, no, go find this motherfucker and stop him. So Weems and Tarleton decide they're going to do what they were doing before, just harder. They're going to burn down even more houses, more plantations, more crops. At one point, they hang a ferryman because he refused to, you know, transport British troops across the river.
Shit.
They hang the guy in front of his wife and kids. They're just absolutely roaming around committing war crimes, terrorizing the civilian population. And as we already know, Francis Marion...
Who do these guys think they are? Canadians? Kind of low insulted here, goddammit.
absolutely hates everything about this, but he's in charge of a bunch of guerrilla fighters. They're all kind of, you know, loose cannons, and he actually has two of his higher ranking guys go out and try to do the same thing to Tory families, and he immediately pulls them back in and reprimands them in front of the entire company and tells all of his guys, this is not how we conduct warfare. His exact words were, and I quote, "To distress innocent women and children is the most despicable of crimes." So A, Francis Marion is just morally opposed to this, which is great. But B, it also still serves his purpose in the grand scheme of things because, again, it's all about optics and morale. So when everybody sees the British are roaming around the countryside, hanging men in front of their wives and kids and burning down their homes, and Francis Marion is not engaging in that type of behavior, everybody wants to support that guy. So obviously, Francis Marion is going to have to do something about this. He's going to have to go confront these guys. The problem is, Bannister Tarleton is a formidable enemy. As far as conducting warfare goes, even though he's brutal about it, he is the best of the best that the British military has to offer as far as getting the job done. To give you an idea of who Francis Marion is now dealing with, Bannister Tarleton is most famous for the Battle of the Waxhaws at this point in time, which was previously this year in May of 1780. The long and short of it is he took his 150-man cavalry unit and chased down an American Continental Army unit of 350 men that had a 10-day head start and were 150 miles away. He caught up to them in 54 hours. He then proceeded to launch an attack, more of a massacre, that killed 113 of them, wounded 150, and captured an additional 53. And in exchange, he suffered 5 killed in action and 13 wounded. This is not another militia leader that just got a group of boys together. This is a dangerous opponent for Francis Marion. But he's got to be stopped, and Francis Marion and his militia are the only men for the job. So they go to work. They use their spy network. They're sending out scouts. They hear that Bannister Tarleton is going to be crossing the river with his men at Nelson's Ferry, so they set up an ambush and wait for the crossing. Bannister Tarleton, being a worthy opponent, does the same thing. He hears that Francis Marion knows that he's coming, and he's setting up an ambush at Nelson's Ferry, so he doesn't walk into the ambush. Instead, he orders his men to set up a camp and then make it look like they left in a hurry, and then he spreads the rumor around that he has retreated back to Camden, trying to bait Francis Marion into chasing him. Tarleton then goes to a nearby plantation owned by Dorothy Richardson, who is the widow of General Richardson, a well-known American patriot in the area, and he lights a massive bonfire next to her house, clearly trying to make it look like he's burning down the house of a widow of a rebel sympathizer to bait Marion into attacking him. And it almost works, but before it does, fate steps in because Dorothy Richardson's son comes into Francis Marion's encampment and warns him, hey, this is a trap. Bannister Tarleton has 400 men in that wood line with 2 cannons. At which point, Francis Marion decides, all right, we're outnumbered. He wants me to chase him. Nah, he can chase me. Marion and his guys retreat into the swamp. Tarleton and his...
Okay. Wildly on left field, this feels like Light versus L. Is anyone else getting this feeling right now? These two, like, trying to, like, outthink each other feels like Light versus L right now. I fucking love, and I love it. I absolutely love it. This mental combat that is happening between these two. It's fucking amazing.
Men chase him. and they go on for 7 hours straight, clearing 26 miles. Well, Bannister Tarleton clears 26 miles. Francis Marion and his guys clear 37 miles. At which point, Bannister Tarleton comes to the realization, I'm never gonna fucking catch this guy in the swamp. It's impossible. I don't know how he's this fast. It is superhuman. So eventually he just accepts the fact that he's never gonna catch Francis Marion, and that is when he tells his men the famous line, and I quote, "Come on boys, let's go back. We'll soon find the gamecock, but as for this damned old fox, the devil himself could not catch him." And this is where Francis Marion gets his famous—
And by the way, we just got Gamecock referring to Thomas Sumter, another prominent militia leader at the time, who was also yet another inspiration, or like his stories were amalgamated along with Francis Marion and others to form the main character of the Patriot. Like, we're getting the crossover we did not think we would get.
damned old fox, the devil himself could not catch him. And this is where Francis Marion gets his famous nickname, the Swamp Fox.
Oh!
All right, so at this point, Francis Marion and his militia are in pretty rough shape. They just got in that high-speed chase with Tarleton for like 7 hours, traveling 30 miles through the swamps. Tarleton ends up calling it quits because he and his men are exhausted. Presumably, Francis Marion and his guys are in the same shape. So that's not great for morale, which is the most important thing we got going on right now. And on top of that, it gets even worse because in a lot of ways, you could see this as a loss. They basically almost fell into an ambush and then had to retreat and run away. That's taking an L any way you want to cut it. And then to make things even worse, presumably they lost a ton, if not all of their supplies because they had to go on this high-speed chase. They probably got seized by the British, or they had to burn them and get rid of them so they didn't fall into the hands of the British. So it is rough right now. Morale is at an all-time low. He probably has dudes leaving, going back home, saying, screw this. It is just, he's got to do something to turn this around, and he also needs to replenish his supplies. Pretty much immediately after this chase with Tarleton, in the coming days, Francis Marion finds out through his intel channels that there's only about 50 British garrisoned at Jamestown. So he figures, okay, we'll do exactly what we did last time. We'll show up, the British will go hide in their fort, we'll steal all their shit. That looks like a win optically. On top of that, I get more supplies. That is exactly what needs to happen to fix my current situation.
First loss, and it's a significant one. I would disagree. I would disagree that this would have been a significant loss. Would you classify it as a loss? Yes, you can classify it as a loss. He did have to retreat. Certainly. A significant one? No, that I will disagree. He lost the supplies. Okay. That's a loss, but he didn't lose any of his men, and they were able to dodge their pursuers. None of his pursuers caught any of his men. He didn't lose a single man. So while he did lose supplies and he did have to retreat, and it is a loss, in no way would I classify that as significant. Like, yeah, there's a hit to morale, certainly, but again, it's more interpreted as a major loss due to morale. Like it's absolutely a hit to the morale. But again, we're not hearing about like significant amounts of desertion. You're gonna have, in a militia-based, militia-based fighting force, you're gonna have people that are just gonna go, you're gonna have people that go, fuck this shit, I'm out all the time. But he didn't lose a significant number of his men. A significant number of his men still remained. They're still willing to fight. They figured out how to get more supplies pretty quickly. So I would not characterize it as a significant loss. A loss, yes, but not to that degree. That's what I would that's how I would characterize it. I would characterize a significant loss if basically not only did he retreat, not only did they lose their supplies, but they lost like half their forces. That, if they lost half their forces either because they were killed, captured, or deserted, then I would characterize it as a significant loss. But with what actually occurred, I wouldn't say it. Plus, they're exhausted. Yeah, they're going to be exhausted. You can get exhausted running away. But the pursuers have left. So they have time to recuperate. Maybe a big loss, not a significant one. I'd say a loss to be sure. Maybe a big loss. I don't even know if I'd be hard pressed to even characterize it as a big loss. I can see the rationale behind calling it a big loss. I could see that. I'm still a little hard pressed to classify it that way, but I won't outright say that's incorrect. Yeah, I'm getting stuck on this, but let's continue.
So on November 15th, 1780, Francis Marion sends in 2 groups of guys to go into Jamestown, scout it out, potentially raid it, steal supplies, get the W. Unfortunately, the intel that Francis Marion had gotten was correct, but it was old, because by the time his 2 groups of 30 men make it into Jamestown, Jamestown has been reinforced by an additional 250 British soldiers. Both groups wind up getting into a skirmish with the British. Francis Marion winds up losing 6 men. In return, he kills 3 Tories and captures an additional 12 as prisoner, and his men are forced to retreat. Optically, to the public, probably doesn't look too horrible. He launched an attack on Jamestown, killed a couple of Tories, took a bunch of them prisoner, lost a couple guys in return. Looks pretty neutral in the eyes of the public, but to Francis Marion and his guys, this is a disaster. Morale is already at an all-time low. They needed to go in there and get supplies. They didn't get any supplies, and instead they lost 6 of their friends. This is horrible. And to make things even worse for Francis Marion in particular, one of the 6 men that were killed was his nephew Gabriel.
I'm joining up with them.
Hello, Gabriel.
From here, there's
Oh, fuck. So there we go. Oh shit.
not a lot Francis Marion can do. It's late November, winter is on its way, and he's got to find somewhere to set up camp to survive this winter. So he goes out deep into the swamps of South Carolina, somewhere where nobody's going to be able to find him, and finds this spot known as Snow's Island. Basically, the PD River veers off from a creek, so he is essentially in this position surrounded by water. He has effectively given himself a moat and this impenetrable terrain position. From here, he's still conducting guerrilla warfare operations, just nothing major. He's still sending out small groups of guys to gather intelligence, raid British supply lines, get more supplies, little tiny stuff they need to do to survive, but he's not going to be doing anything big until winter's over. But then something amazing happens. He starts getting all kinds of supplies from the local population. He starts getting a ton of more volunteers. In a matter of weeks, he goes from having like 200 guys to having over 700 men. And this all happens because after Bannister Tarleton had given up chasing him, after Bannister Tarleton effectively beat him, he somehow still managed to turn around and turn it into a loss for the British. Remember, this entire thing is all about morale and optics. The British came out of the Bannister Tarleton chase looking fantastic. Francis Marion was running things in South Carolina. Then Bannister Tarleton shows up, a hot shot from Great Britain, their military leader, and he chases Francis Marion out of town, and now Francis Marion is gone. That is the W for the British. Optically, it looks absolutely phenomenal. All he had to do was nothing. He literally could have done nothing and would have looked great. He could have turned around and been nice to people in the public, and he would have looked even better. Do you think that's what he did? Absolutely not. Rather than do that, he decides that he's going to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory, because he immediately, after giving up chase from Francis Marion, goes back to Dorothy Richardson's farm, beats the shit out of her, burns her house down, burns all of her crops, and then goes and burns down a bunch of other houses in the area. Just really driving home the point of, hey, I am the bad guy. I am unironically evil to absolutely everyone.
Yeah.
Your brutality has swelled his ranks, without which this ghost would have disappeared and I would be in North Carolina or Virginia by now.
So now the entire countryside is siding with Francis Marion, and they're showing up to help him. And then some more intel falls into his lap that about 250 fresh British soldiers just got here from across the sea, and they are being escorted by a more veteran military unit up to Camden so they can get more training and get better equipped. Okay, this is the perfect target. Francis Marion now has the opportunity to set a tone and demoralize the new guys that just got here right out of the gate. And that's exactly what he does at the Battle of Halfway Swamp on December 12th, 1780. He gets all of his guys. They basically go out and they surround these 250 redcoats. Does Francis Marion have superior numbers? Yes. Could he go out and confront them in the open field and probably crush them? Absolutely. Is that what he's going to do? No, he still goes full guerrilla warfare mode. Why? Because one, it's effective, and two, it's all about morale. If he goes out and confronts in the open field, he's almost certainly going to lose more men than if he just sits there in the wood line and picks all these guys off. Francis Marion doesn't give a shit about being a gentleman and doing warfare the gentlemanly way. He cares about the lives of his men, and when the men see that, it's going to increase their morale, and they're going to want to follow him even more.
I'll do it even one better. It's not about being gentlemanly. It's about winning the fucking fight. It's about winning the fight in the most efficient and effective way possible. Fuck that, oh, we need to be gentlemanly. Oh, fuck that, like, we need to do things the proper way. No, you finish the fight in the most efficient way possible, because not only is it a morale boost for you, It's a demorale cliff for your enemy. This is what so many of these, like, if that, back, with the British back then, this is what they simply couldn't get. Why so many of these generals were like, we have to do it proper. There is a proper gentlemanly way to do things. The minute they get confronted by a fighting force, a lethal fighting force that says, nah, fuck that. We're not fighting to be gentlemanly. We're fighting to fucking win. They collapse. That's the difference. Therein lies the biggest fault with the British military. They were so powerful and so successful for so many years because they were gentlemanly, but they had superior numbers. That they were counting on their superior numbers and the fact that they engaged in gentlemanly warfare, and that their opponents would also engage in quote unquote gentlemanly warfare, that when they fought against an opponent that basically took the rule book and turned it in and basically lit it the fuck on fire, they had no idea how to properly counteract that.
So Marion's militia goes out there, they're picking off all the pickets, which are like the forward elements from the main body, and picking off officers left and right. After he softened them up and got them all discombobulated, he launches a head-on assault and forces the British to retreat. They chase him for like a mile and a half. Eventually, the British run into this big rail fence, and they're basically stuck. They're forced to turn around and adopt a defensive fighting position, at which point the British officer in charge, General McLaren, sends out a messenger to Francis Marion. He wants to talk. Francis Marion, presumably thinking about what he's always thinking about, morale and the lives of his men. Okay, maybe this guy's willing to surrender, and if he's willing to surrender, that's a W for me. I remove the bad guys from the battlefield without having to kill them and risk the lives of my men. Sure, I'll talk with this guy. So they go into this meeting, and this British officer informs Francis Marion that his actions of ordering his men to pick off the forward elements and the officers is, and I quote, violates the rules of warfare and civilized nations. To which Francis Marion responds, my actions are infinitely more humane than the actions of Weems and Tarleton, who are running around the countryside burning down homes and harming innocent women and children.
Yes.
As long as your men continue burning down people's houses, my men will continue shooting officers and pickets.
You know, this is not the conduct of a gentleman.
If the conduct of your officers is the measure of a gentleman, I'll take that as a compliment.
And this is where things get weird. At this point, the British officer makes a proposal to Francis Marion. He wants to have a duel, but not Francis Marion versus McLaren. McLaren wants to take his 20 best marksmen versus Francis Marion's 20 best marksmen and have a 20-man duel in the middle of everybody, and basically winner takes all, the other team surrenders. Now, presumably, Francis Marion's thinking, okay, this guy's, officer and gentlemanly, surely he wouldn't lie. On top of that, his 20 best marksmen are British soldiers. They have smoothbore muskets. My 20 best marksmen are all guerrilla fighters that have Kentucky rifles that are 3, 4, 5 times as accurate as a smoothbore musket. These guys don't stand a fucking chance. And optically, how's it gonna look for morale when I'm challenged to a duel, I accept the duel, and my 20 best guys absolutely shit stomp the British's 20 best guys in open combat?
Problem with the logic, which I hope he sees. In the previous breath, he was talking about how their gentlemanly way of doing things is to burn houses and beat women and children. So what makes him think that he's going to be gentlemanly about this?
It's going to look great. So Francis Marion takes the deal. From here, they agree they're going to have this duel first thing in the morning. That night, they're going to pick their 20 best men. Maybe the men are going to go train, whatever. They basically set up camp for the night. And then in the middle of the night, the British tuck tail and run. Morning comes around, Francis Marion realizes what has happened. The British officer, in a gentlemanly warfare type fashion, fucking lied and ran away from the duel that he proposed, so Francis Marion and his guys chase him down. They finally reach this element, and the entire situation devolves into this, like, the British are still retreating while firing back, and Marion's men are advancing while firing. It's like this retreating skirmish. Eventually, the British come upon this plantation that's up on a hill owned by the Singleton family, and they run up onto this hill, take over the plantation, and set up a really good defensive position, at which point Francis Marion is heavily considering going up there and taking them out anyways. But he's not just going to run in there blind, he's going to do what Francis Marion does. He's going to be prepared for everything. He sends out scouts, they're scouting the area, he's gathering intel, and when he's gathering intel, he finds out that the Singleton family residing in that plantation currently has smallpox. At which point, Francis Marion is like, I'm not about to have all my men be getting smallpox. The British should probably already have smallpox at this point. Biological warfare is good enough to me. Pack the shit up, boys. We're going back to the fortress at Snow Island.
There you go. There you go.
Once he gets back to Snow Island, Francis Marion is finally able to establish contact with the Continental Army by way of
He didn't even need to blockade them. They've already got smallpox. There's no need to blockade them. The smallpox will take them out probably in a matter of, I don't know, a week. Roughly, I'd say roughly a week. Smallpox will take him out. He didn't even need to do anything.
Nathaniel Greene, aka the Fighting Quaker, aka George Washington's right-hand man, one of the most important generals in the American Revolution. Okay, just so we're all on the same page, just because I want this to be perfectly clear, everything Francis Marion has done in the Revolutionary War up till this point has been completely unguided, unprompted, and his own idea ever since his last order he was given by Horatio Gates months and months and months ago. Go down to the Santee River and like burn down some boats or something. Up till this point, Francis Marion.
Oh, hello, Griffin Knight. Hello, Raiders. Welcome in. You're catching us on the last half hour of Nick's video about Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox. Hope you had a great stream. If you wanna stick around with us for the last third of Nick's video here, please feel free.
Has literally just been fucking winging it all by himself, but now he finally has communication with the Continental Army and they can start coordinating and working together. And Nathaniel Greene, like pretty much everybody else involved in this war, knows exactly who Francis Marion is, the Swamp Fox. He is literally a living legend at this point. Because of this, he is pretty much immediately awarded the rank of Brigadier General and essentially told, if it comes to a militia in South Carolina, basically you're the boss, you run that shit. And just to be clear, he is not a continental like US Army officer. He's still a militia officer, but now he and his militia are both formally recognized by the Continental Army. They're no longer seen as just a ragtag group of guys running around in the woods doing things. They're actually like formally recognized by the Army and they are working with the Continental Army at this point. Pretty much immediately, Francis Marion requests more men. He's like,
effectively, if you need to put a modern day term on it, they're like a PNC. I think that is probably the most effective modern day equation to what Francis Marion and his troops are, is they effectively had become a PNC.
Look, I'm running exclusively guerrilla fighters down here. I know how to use conventional forces and guerrilla forces in conjunction with one another. I would be out.
Nope, not National Guard. Not National Guard, because National Guard is still a part of the United States military. Francis Marion and his people are not a part of the continental military. They are their own thing, but they're recognized as like allies of the continental military, so they can work in conjunction with them. So it'd be much more closely aligned to a PMC than National Guard.
Here, I know how to use conventional forces and guerrilla forces in conjunction with one another. I would be outrageously effective. Send me some guys. And Nathaniel Greene obliges by sending him like 350 Continental soldiers under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Henry Lighthorse Lee, aka the dad of the car from the Dukes of Hazzard. I'm just kidding. The car is named after his son, General Lee from the Civil War, like the main general for the South in the Civil War. Yeah, this is his dad. So they get teamed up. At this point, they decide that they're going to attack Georgetown for a third time. So they do what they always do. They're sending out scouts. They're gathering intel. Him and Lee develop this massive, complicated battle plan to take Georgetown once and for all. Without getting too far into the weeds on this, basically what happened, the British found out they were coming. They were very prepared. They wind up getting in this massive stalemate. Both the British and the Americans lose like a couple of guys, but there isn't any huge battle. They do not take Georgetown. Francis Marion decides, okay, I'm not going to risk my entire force trying to go up against a fortified enemy, and they retreat. And at this point, Georgetown, Francis Marion's childhood home for a good portion of his childhood, is basically turning into his white whale. It's like the one thing in this war that he can't quite get a grasp on. And the reason I even bring this up is because it goes to show you what a phenomenal leader Francis Marion is, because he's emotionally invested in taking Georgetown. That's a childhood home. It's been under control of the British. On top of that, it's the only thing he's failed to take multiple times. And despite all of that, he never lets his emotions or his ego get in the way of his decision-making skills. He is always placing the welfare of his men and the bigger picture first.
Base leader. Absolute base leader.
All right, so Francis Marion and his guys are back at Snow Island when he gets intelligence that there is a large British force that has amassed, and they are coming to Snow Island to root out the Swamp Fox, and they are being led by British Colonel John Tadwell Watson. And intelligence says it's like 500 well-trained, well-equipped British soldiers with artillery. And while Snow Island is a highly defendable position, Swamp Fox doesn't really have any artillery to rebuttal with, so we're gonna have to handle this the old-fashioned way. Francis Marion leaves behind a small contingency of men to guard Snow Island, grabs the rest of his guys, and heads out to confront him. Now, this is what comes to be known as the Bridge Campaign. Basically, it is like 10 separate battles and skirmishes that all happen within the span of about 2 weeks. I'm not gonna go into the nitty-gritty of each of these individual 10 battles. We're gonna do a brief, rough and dirty overview of the entire thing. Now, to get the party started, Francis Marion launches an ambush outside of Waibu Swamp on this narrow causeway. Basically, he caught him right in the middle of a choke point. They open fire on the British from the tree line. The tree line sends the cavalry charging towards them, but they're ready for it. They don't fall back. They don't retreat. They stand their ground and wind up driving the British cavalry backwards, at which point they launch their own charge to attack the retreating enemy. Once they get out in the open down this narrow causeway, they realize that was a mistake because Watson has artillery set up and starts hitting them with grape shot. Marion's militia is forced to retreat, and then the cavalry starts charging them again. Now they are the ones getting charged while they're retreating. It is about to go horrifically wrong. But then one man changes the entire battle. Private James Gavin on horseback, who's described as being massive for this period in time, decides that he's gonna not retreat. He's gonna turn around and he's going to charge the oncoming British and meets them at the narrowest part of this causeway. He then proceeds to stand in the pocket, shoot one of them, bayonet several others, and while this is going on, the other men see it. Francis Marion gets them formed back up and they charge. And to respond to that, Watson basically goes all in. He pushes all of his chips into the table, has all of his infantry do a bayonet charge coming in behind their cavalry. Francis Marion sees this and orders a retreat. And the reason Francis Marion had to do this was because a significant portion of Marion's men are all carrying rifles, not muskets, and their rifles don't have bayonets. So going bayonet to bayonet was not an option, and he wasn't about to sacrifice all of his guys. They pull back. At this point, Francis Marion's like, okay, the whole confront him in the open field in broad daylight thing didn't really work out. Time to get creative.
Let's try some schoolyard bullshit.
Francis Marion knows the entire country like the back of his hand, and he knows exactly where they're going. They're going to the bridge at Mount Hope Swamp. So Marion has some of his guys just stalking this British formation, taking pop shots at him from trees. The British get all pissed off. They form up into battle ranks. They return a volley into the woods, but by then, his guys are long gone. They're just constantly harassing the British 24/7. While that's going on, the rest of his guys ride way ahead, and they're way faster than the British because they're not worrying about taking fucking cannons with them, so they go up to the bridge and destroy it. The very next day, once the British make it to this bridge, or where this bridge used to be, there's an ambush set up with a bunch of riflemen over in the tree line on the other side of the bridge, shooting at them with their rifles. Again, rifles have a much further range than these muskets. The British can't really do anything. Basically, they have to turn around, change course, go to the next bridge. Francis Marion knows about that fucking bridge too, so he has his guys right ahead and destroy that bridge as well. They get to where that bridge used to be. It's another ambush. Now Watson's getting pissed. He has the cannons come forward, sets the cannons up, starts firing cannons over this river at Marion's men, but Marion positioned his men at a low part of the ground, so the cannon fire just goes right over their heads. And then the rifle...
See, this is where home field advantage makes all the difference. Keep in mind, Francis Marion is able to pull all of this off literally because it's not only forethought, but it's home field advantage. He knows this area like the back of his hand. He knows the choke points. He knows the hills. He knows where the landmarks are. He knows where the cross points are. He knows all of this. None of the British do. They don't have, they're basically maybe working off of maps, working off of intel, which could be a little bit iffy in terms of what they're being told is what and where. He actually knows it. And that is clearly making all the difference. He knew, okay, they go this way, they're going to have to go to this bridge. Let's fuck that bridge up. Okay, so they'll have to go to this bridge instead. Okay, let's fuck that bridge up. Okay, we'll set up on here. We'll set up in this area at a low point when they try to, so if they try to hit us with their artillery, it's just going to go flying over our heads. Well, our rifle fire is still going to be very effective. Why? Because he knew the terrain. He knew how to use, he knew the terrain. He knew battle tactics, he knew weapons and what they could do, and he knew how to use all of that for his advantage. This is a true tactical leader and a tactical genius.
Men start picking off all the guys that are trying to man the cannons. Now Watson's getting pissed. He's like, fuck this. He just orders his infantry to run through the river to confront Swamp Fox. And then, according to the accounts, some big badass British infantry officer draws his sword and starts leading his men into the river, at which point, whether it was Francis Marion or it was just the vibe at the time, they said,
Shoot that guy.
The officer with his sword out leading the charge immediately gets shot in the chest. And then one of the British soldiers tries to run out and save him. Then that guy gets shot. Then another guy. He gets shot also. Then 2 more guys run out and try to save them, and they both get shot. Finally, the British realize this isn't going to work, and they're forced to retreat. They got to find another bridge. And this goes on pretty much exactly like this for like 2 weeks straight. They are just harassing and picking off the British left and right constantly. Reports at the time actually say that the British commander was so embarrassed that he started burying and sinking the dead bodies of his men into the swamps because he didn't want to have to report how many casualties he actually had. Eventually, Watson's mission goes from, I'm going to go take out the swamp fox, to, I need to survive and get the fuck out of here. And he just starts retreating back to Georgetown. And in order to do that, he's going to have to hurry. He's going to have to move a lot faster. What's slowing him down? The cannons. So he throws his cannons into a creek and abandons them. He then proceeds to run off to Georgetown.
Look at that! Swamp Fox has acquired artillery. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na. Look at that! Free cannons!
And Marion and his guys harass him and pick him off the whole way there. Whatever's left of his guys make their way into Georgetown. Francis Marion and his boys call it a day. They pack their stuff up. They head back to Snow Island. Commander Watson later had a couple of quotes about this situation, one of which is as follows.
Actually, I make the joke. I don't think he wouldn't have taken him, though. That's the thing. He probably would have just left them there, maybe like disabled them in some way. But it would go against, yeah, exactly. That's why I made the joke about it, but realistically, he wouldn't take them because his tactics were based upon the fact that they were not slowed down by cannons. That was the core part of all of his battle plans, all of his guerrilla tactics, is you're not slowed down by cannons. Yeah, you do your hit and runs, you do your harassments, you guide them into the trap. Yeah, it's not something that he would use.
And I quote, "They will not sleep and fight like gentlemen, but like savages, and are eternally firing and whooping around us by day, and by night waylaying and popping at us from behind trees." In addition to that, he also said, and I quote, "I have never seen such shooting before in my life."
Oh.
All right, important context for the broader part of what's going on in the war, right? Nathaniel Greene's men have now come back into the South, and they are fighting the British, and Nathaniel Greene has just been defeated by General Cornwallis at the Battle of Guilford's Courthouse. And I put the air quotes because, like, yeah, technically the British did win that battle because the Americans were attacking and the British held their ground. That is a W, I guess. But in holding the ground, Nathaniel Greene's men destroyed like a third to a half of General Cornwallis's army, and it basically destroyed his entire campaign. So the Battle of Guilford's Courthouse was basically like, yeah, the British won the battle, but it gave America the win of the war. For the British, between the disaster at Guilford's Courthouse and Francis Marion creating absolute havoc in South Carolina, General Cornwallis is literally like, fuck this, I'm done. He hands off the Southern Theater to one of his subordinates and dips out. He's like, I'm gonna go attack Virginia or something. I can't handle this shit anymore. They literally made General Cornwallis rage quit.
This is bullshit.
So at this point in time, the war is starting to look really good for the colonials, but it's not like a guaranteed we're gonna have an outright win out of the gate. There's still a pretty big possibility that there could be some type of peace treaty or peace agreement. And if that happens, whatever territory the British are still in control of, they're probably gonna get to keep. Which means strategically at this point, the British are basically just like turtling up in their fortresses so they can claim that they're still in control of that territory so they get to keep it if there's a peace treaty. If so facto, they need to go take out the British inside of their forts so they can't claim that they're in control of that territory anymore. So Nathaniel Greene kind of sends out the order to his big militia leaders, mainly Francis Marion and Thomas Sumter, the Gamecock, go take out British forts and take them over so we're in control of that.
Oh my god, they sent out 2 main characters to go deal with this. Oh, it is fucking on. You send 2 main characters to go deal with the British, they're fucking done. They might as well just throw it up and go, yep, that's it, I'm done, I'm not fucking with this, bye-bye.
Territory. And Francis Marion and Lighthorse Lee in particular get told to go take out a place called Fort Watson. Now, Fort Watson is a tough objective to try to take over because it is out in the middle of an open field on top of a hill. So they have the high ground and there's nothing for Francis Marion's men to really hide inside of, and he still doesn't have any cannons or artillery or siege equipment. So Marion and Lighthorse have the numbers. They've got about 380 guys they can throw at this mission. The fort is only guarded by about 120 guys, but again, they're gonna have to run out into an open field while these guys are hiding behind the walls of this fortress it's not great odds. On the plus side though, Fort Watson is kind of unique in the fact that it's a fort and it doesn't have any artillery. There's no cannons there. Why doesn't it have any cannons there? Well, there was this British officer who got sent out to capture the swamp fox, and he decided that he was going to take Fort Watson's cannons with him, and then he got his ass whooped and had to abandon them in a creek.
Get fucked! There you go! Get fucked, you idiot! Oh, that is fucking beautiful! What's more, if they wanted to, they could go back and get the fort's cannons, fix them, and then use them against the fucking fort if they really wanted to. Considering their target, and it's not a viable solution because it's on an open field on a hill, this is a scenario where getting those cannons and bringing those cannons with them could fucking work.
So things could definitely be worse, but they're still not looking that great. But hey, we're gonna try. So Francis Marion and Lighthorse Lee grab their guys, they ride out to the fort, they confront them at the fort, and they're like, all right, we have you surrounded, time to surrender. And the British are like, nah. Shit, all right, plan B. We're gonna starve them out. There's no well inside the fort. They gotta come out to get water, and every time they send dudes out to go to the river to get water, we're gonna kill them. That works the first couple of times, and then eventually the British figure that out, so they dig a well inside the fort. Now they no longer have to leave the fort at all. Or at least until they run out of food, and who knows how much food they have in there. So now, Swamp Fox and all his guys are just kind of like sitting there, twiddling their thumbs, and remember, most of them are guerrilla fighters, so you got guys coming and going, you got guys getting bored, you got guys that are showing up and volunteering for a day or two. Eventually, if he can't figure out how to end this battle, all of his men are going to lose morale and everybody's just going to go home. So the British at this point are basically just playing out the clock. So Francis Marion and Lighthorse Lee and the rest of the men as a whole, they're all getting super frustrated. They know that if they just had some artillery, they could blow the fucker up and go home.
Is it happening? Is it gonna happen?
So Lee actually writes Nathaniel Greene a letter basically begging for a cannon. It's worded kind of funky because it's the 1700s, but he says, and I quote, "I beg you will send down a field piece. It can get to me in 1 day and a half. I will have horses meet it, which will go off from me on here from you. All things are well here, and no possible danger can attend the sending the cannon. 5 minutes will finish the business and it can be returned immediately." Okay, translation, can I please borrow a fucking cannon for like 5 minutes? I've been fighting an entire war with zero equipment. I just need an actual piece of military equipment for like 5 seconds. I'll give it right back, I promise. Nathaniel Greene gets the letter and is like, okay, cool. Immediately sends them a cannon. Thank God. And then the guys bringing the cannon there get lost. Then everything gets 10 times worse because there's a smallpox outbreak and all the dudes are getting ready to be like, screw this, I'm going home.
God.
Then out of left field, an officer that's under Lighthorse Lee by the name of Hezekiah Maham comes to Francis Marion and Lighthorse. He's got an idea. Okay, hear me out. We can't get to them because they're hiding behind these walls and they have the high ground. What if we built taller walls so that we had the higher ground to their high ground? What if we built a bigger fortress than them?
Oh my sweet fuck. Chat. They are literally about to use Fortnite logic. They are literally about to do a Fortnite move here. Seriously, that is literally what they are about to do. Holy fuck. They're
Dude, what are you even talking about? Have you been smoking with the Catawba Warriors again? No, listen, a tower. Their fort is only like 23 feet high. What if we built like a 30, 40 foot high tower, we climbed up on top of it, and then we shot down below at them? Siege equipment. You want to build literal siege equipment like it's a medieval castle we're trying to take. Uh-huh. Go tell the guys to go to every plantation in the surrounding area, get every axe and saw they can find and start cutting down trees. They spend the rest of the day cutting down trees, basically prefabbing a bunch of logs for construction, and then that night they go and build a somewhere between 30 and 40 foot high tower 30 yards away from the fort.
They are literally using fucking Fortnite logic. I fucking love this. We need to get it. We need to. They have a 20-foot tower. We need to fire down onto it. Let's build a 30-foot tower. And they're literally just breaking out the plans and building a tower to get up on top to basically search. What the? I fucking love this. I fucking love this. Oh my god!
Then the next morning when the sun comes up, there's a bunch of riflemen on top of a 40-foot high tower looking down at all the British guys inside of their fort, and they start opening fire on them. And while that's going on, another group of guys run up to the fort with axes and start beating their way through the wooden fort.
Again, they're trying to cut. They're using axes to get through the. Again, they're literally playing Fortnite. This literally just turned into goddamn Fortnite. They're using the axe tools to break down their fucking structures that they've already built. What the actual fuck is happening right now? What is happening?
What you're thinking? Why didn't the British just shoot back? Like, I understand they're riflemen, their guns are more accurate, but the British have way more guys inside their fort than you could possibly fit up on this little tower, and the muskets are still going to be wildly effective at 30 yards away. Why didn't the British just shoot them? Well, that's because when they built the tower, they intentionally built the tower on the side of the fort so that when the sun was coming up in the morning, it was to their backs, aka directly in the British guys' eyes. So now they're trying to have a pop quiz firefight against a guy with a more accurate weapon and have a staring contest with the sun at the same time. The British wind up surrendering within an hour. And yet again, it all comes down to morale. Everything Francis Marion does is win or lose based on morale, because the British officer that lost the fort had this to say about it, and I quote, "We were reduced to the disagreeable necessity of capitulating by the cowardly and mutinous behavior of the majority of the men having grounded their arms and refusing to defend the post any longer."
Translation: hose mad. He bitched out, and he hated the fact that he bitched that his people bitched out.
Okay, translation, my men got demoralized and couldn't take it anymore. We thought we were winning, we had a fort, we had the high ground. The Americans said, fuck you, we'll build higher ground, and then we'll kill you anyways. And my men got scared, and they wanted to go home.
Oh my God, I almost died.
From here, they start playing the next fort they gotta take out. They gotta take out Fort Mott, which is on the Mott plantation, owned by the widow, Rebecca Mott. Now, Rebecca Mott and her late husband were and are both humongous patriots, and she's actually been feeding intel to Francis Marion for a long time, using her position inside of Mott Fortress. And basically they came in, they took over her plantation house, built a fort around it, and kicked her out. She's now living in a small cabin somewhere in her property. And to make things worse, Francis Marion's just got intel that apparently the British have received word that they took out Fort Watson, so now they're sending out reinforcements to all the other forts, and those reinforcements are gonna get there in like 24 hours. So if they're ever gonna have a chance at taking this fort, it's gotta be right now, and even then, it's borderline impossible because you can't really take a fort in 24 hours. That's not how siege warfare works. It's long and drug out. Unless we just burn the whole thing to the ground. No, we can't do that, again, because Rebecca Mott's house is in the middle of this fortress, and we like Rebecca Mott. She's on our team. Okay, again, it's all about.
So when is Rebecca gonna look at Francis Marion and say, burn it all? I don't care that my house is there. I can rebuild the house. Burn those fuckers to the ground.
About morale, I can't be seen burning down the houses of people that are trying to help me. Unless we get permission first. So Francis Marion goes to Marion Mott's cabin on her property and is like, hey, hear me out. Would you be okay if I burn the fort down with your house inside of it? And Miss Mott is 100% down. She hates the British. They stole her house. If she can't have the house, nobody can have the fucking house. Not only is she okay and gives Francis Marion permission to burn down her house, she's like, how are you gonna do it? And he's like, I don't know. I didn't really get that far ahead. I guess like a flaming stick, throw it, something. And she's like, no. Here, I've got this bow and arrow, and my husband has these special arrows that he imported from East India that explode on impact. You can shoot those at the thatched roof to.
She's like, oh my fucking God, this is amazing. This is fucking amazing. Not just flaming arrows, fucking yeah, Rambo exploding arrows. Oh my dear fuck, I love this. I love everything about this thing. I love everything about this, and I love this woman.
Lighted on fire from a distance. Yes! And this is why we do intel work. Okay, it's like a video game. Like, you could run in and do the mission guns blazing, or you could take a minute and talk to the NPCs, the non-player characters, and maybe, I don't know, they'll give you a legendary item to make the mission way easier.
What is this?
Yep.
Where did you get that armor from? Why is your sword on fire? What?
And as if that wasn't cool enough, the guys that were trying to bring
Fever
them the
Dirt
cannon
League,
that
love
got
it.
lost at the last fort finally found him and have delivered a cannon. So now he also has a cannon and like these firework arrows imported from the east. So he has the boys go set up the cannon on some high ground so they can shoot over the wall into the fortress. And then he launches the flaming arrows onto the thatched roof. The roof catches fire. The British go up, try to put the fire out, but his guys with the cannon keep firing grape shot at him. So they just have to sit there and watch the house burn down. The British wind up surrendering so fast that Marion's men are able to take them as POWs and then go in and put out the fire and save most of the house. And then according to legend, Francis Marion, Light Horse, the British officers, and Miss Mott all have dinner together that night. From here, on to the next fort, Georgetown, the White Whale, the fourth attempt for Francis Marion to take Georgetown. He rolls up with his guys. He starts getting ready to make siege, and the British see he's coming. The British have already heard that he took out Fort Watson, he took out Fort Mott, and every single time it gets crazier and weirder, and they surrender faster and faster and faster. The British are like, fuck this. They retreat and abandon Georgetown, and Francis Marion takes it without firing a single shot. Everything is about morale. Francis Marion has not only bolstered the morale of the Patriot cause, but he has completely...
Okay, counterpoint. How much of a blue ball was this? How much of a war blue balling was this for Francis Marion? He rolls up to Georgetown like, motherfuckers, I'm going to end you. This is my fourth time. This is my home. I will be taking back this city. And he's ready for the fight of his fucking life. And then all of a sudden they all roach out and he's like, but I want to kill you. But I want to kill you. Why? I mean, yes, he cares about his band. It's a comedic joke. But sir, you don't think in the back of his mind, like, I wanted to kill just one of these motherfuckers for taking Georgetown, and they all roach the fuck out, and we get it back without firing a shot. You don't think he was just a little bit pissed off that he got blue-balled a little bit? Yeah, he can't. Yeah, it's good that none of his men had to engage, none of his men got lost in the battle or anything. But you're telling me that he wasn't just a little bit disappointed that, yeah, he didn't have a war pussy to shove his war boner into a little bit. Not even just the tip. He didn't even get just the tip, chat. Just say it. You guys know how aggravating that can be, I'm sure.
Demoralize the enemy. Francis Marion has the British so scared, it's not a question of if they're gonna lose, it's a question of how are we gonna lose? What crazy shit is he gonna pull off next?
Oh.
From here, Francis Marion goes, he takes a couple of really smaller forts, pretty much the same events unfold, they don't put up much of a fight. He also gets involved in a couple of skirmishes here and there, he's disrupting enemy supply lines, he's doing Francis Marion things, but nothing major. That is until August of 1781, when a British major by the name of Thomas Fraser decided that he was going to set a tone with the public. He decided that it would be a good idea to hang a colonel by the name of Isaac Haney in front of everybody in the middle of downtown Charleston, and Isaac Haney was like a really big name. He was one of the faces of the revolution. Everybody in this area knew and loved this guy. And Major Fraser just executed him in front of everybody. And now the entire population in South Carolina is looking over at Swamp Fox like, are you going to do something about that?
Fuck it.
Okay, A, Francis Marion and his guys probably want to just on principle, but B, this is another golden opportunity. Francis Marion has now worked himself into the common zeitgeist of what amounts to a superhero. Like there's a villain going around killing people and everybody looks to him to solve the problem. And Francis Marion...
In other words, he's fucking Batman. Francis Marion has become an amalgamation of both Batman and Superman at this point.
He knows he needs to deliver. This is his opportunity to bolster morale, win in the eyes of the public, be seen as the good guy, and that's exactly what he's gonna do. Francis Marion has like 400 men at this point, and they ride like 100 miles to track this guy down. Now, once they find the general area, Francis Marion does what he always does. He sends out scouts, he sends out decoys, he gathers intel, and when the intel comes back, not the greatest news, they basically tell him, it's too big of a force for us to attack. Francis Marion has 400 guys. How big is this enemy force? Well, Fraser is in charge of about 80 dragoons, infantrymen on horseback that ride up to battle and then they dismount. Whatever. Okay, 80, that's not a big number, but they're also being accompanied by 180 Hessian mercenaries, highly trained German soldiers, essentially, 130 Tories, militiamen, and then 150 British regulars for a total of 540 men, plus they have cannons.
Big army only means one thing. More targets.
Francis Marion, on the other hand, is like, oh no, we're fucking these guys up right here, right now, and he sets up a trap. Francis Marion knows right where these guys are headed. They're headed to Parker's Ferry, and between them and Parker's Ferry is a causeway, the perfect spot for an ambush. So Francis Marion takes a couple small groups of guys and basically orders them, hey, ride out and just go harass the shit out of these guys. Shoot at them and then run away. Shoot at them and then run away. Keep guiding them towards this narrow causeway. But most importantly, make sure that by the time they reach this causeway, they're pissed off and tired of you guys. So those guys go do that. Francis Marion takes the rest of his force and rides out to this causeway. He takes about 80 men and sticks them back and down a different road that's at a 90-degree angle to this causeway, and he has them hide in the woods there. They're gonna come in after the ambush starts and flank the enemy from the rear. He takes the rest of his men and lines them up on both sides of this causeway in the swamp. He's going to catch the enemy in a crossfire in this narrow path. Cutting back to the British perspective, they have this massive force. They keep getting, you know, little groups of guys, 5 guys trying to shoot at them from the road, and then they disappear into the woods, and then they chase them. They're gone. They do it again. Then they do it again. Then they do it again. The British are thinking, oh, it's just local militia. It's some farmers that picked up their guns. They're fucking with us. This is annoying. We're kind of getting tired of it. And then finally, Thomas Fraser gets eyes on the guys that have been harassing him for the past couple of miles. They are standing in the middle of this very narrow causeway out in the open. And he's probably thinking, he's gonna end this shit right here. He's got horses. They don't. He orders all of his dragoons to charge down this causeway to take care of these guys.
Gotcha, bitch.
As soon as they cross into the causeway, both sides of this causeway erupt in gunfire, and there's nothing they can do because this is a narrow choke point with horses running forward at full sprint. You can't just stop and turn around. It's like hitting the brakes and throwing it in reverse on the freeway in traffic. It's going to be a disaster. You can either get trampled by the guys behind you, or you can just run the gauntlet. That's what they are forced to do. A ton of the men and horses get shot and killed. Commander Fraser actually gets shot off of his horse and then trampled by his own men. Now, some of the men actually do make it through this gauntlet, but at this point, they only have one thing they can kind of do. You know, they have their main force of infantry dudes on foot that are, you know, a mile back at this point. They're coming, they're running towards them to help, but it's going to take a second. And now they are basically stranded out there in the middle of nowhere with no help. The only thing.
Yeah, bearing in mind the militia, the ground forces that are running to help them, by the time they get there, all of Marion's troops will have reloaded. They're going to be reloaded and ready, so when all of these ground troops come running into this choke point, they're going to come right into that crossfire with every single gun having been reloaded and ready.
They can do if they want to survive is take off running the other direction and risk getting caught on your own, or turn around and rerun the gauntlet and try to make it back to their guys, which is what most of them do. Okay, I'm inferring a lot here, but in my head, I just imagine like some British cavalry dude that's thankful that he just survived, frantically riding his horse as fast as he can over the bodies of his dead friends as the entire tree line is full of pissed off Americans reloading rifles like, I'm gonna fucking get your ass. Some of them make it, some of
He tried to reenact this. He tried to reenact the opening scene of fucking Dances with Wolves. He's just riding, arms thrown back, like.
of them don't, but then, you know, the main force shows up. They bring their cannons right up front, at which point Francis Marion is like,
kill that guy.
They start trying to man these cannons, and every dude that gets anywhere near that cannon gets absolutely dropped. They're never able to fire off a single shot. Now from here, his other detachment of men that he sent down the road should be coming down that road to flank these guys from the rear, but they're not coming for whatever reason. So Francis Marion's main force just winds up in this long, drawn-out skirmish with the British. They didn't have radios back then. It's not like he could just radio his guy and be like,
what
flank
happened?
now. And for whatever reason, the guy isn't coming in and flanking. So Francis Marion just keeps having his guy guys, pick off every British dude that tries to man this cannon, and they're basically just farming the British for XP. And this goes on for like a while, potentially multiple hours, depending on which source you want to read. And then eventually Francis Marion hears the British guys yelling, "We're getting flanked from the right." And he's like, fucking finally, I can crush all of these guys. He's like,
there we go.
The right. They should be getting flanked from the left. What the fuck is going on? And the British start like reacting like they're getting flanked to the right, which they're not. Francis Marion knows they're not getting flanked from that direction. Also, he's been in this firefight for so long, all of his men are low on ammo. At this point, Francis Marion...
Wait. Did one of his people that he sent to flank from the left send like one guy or two guys to the right to pretend like they're about to get flanked from the right, get the British to turn and face them, giving the actual flanking attack their back?
It's like, okay, they're clearly confused. I'm clearly confused. I don't know what the fuck is going on. I'm low on ammo. It's time to dip, and him and his men just disappear into the swamp. The British were in fact not getting flanked. For whatever reason, his flanking element just decided to not show up. Francis Marion was pretty pissed about it. He would have been able to destroy the entire British force if they had, but things still worked out. One of the British officers that survived this engagement would later go on to say, and I quote, "Every man of the artillery were killed or wounded before they could bring their artillery to bear upon the enemy, who immediately retired without the least injury. We lost 125 killed and a great many wounded." Francis Marion, on the other hand, reported losing only one man and having 3 guys get hurt. All right, the Battle of Utah Springs. Now, the Battle of Parker's Ferry that we just talked about took place on August 30th, 1781. The Battle of Utah Springs takes place on September 8th, so like a week later. So by this point, Francis Marion and his men have rode up and they have joined forces with Nathaniel Greene and the rest of the Continental Army and some other militias, and they have about 2,200 guys, and they're going to be going toe-to-toe with the British, who have 2,000 guys, pretty evenly matched. This is a big battle. Worth noting, the British are a couple hundred guys short of the Americans, primarily horse-mounted soldiers. I wonder why.
They all died.
Now, this is a conventional battle. This is open field warfare. Everybody's marching up with ranks. They're, you know, standing in front of each other, shooting the muskets, firing volleys. And Francis Marion's militia is right up in the front line. Doesn't really happen that often, but that's where Francis Marion is with his guys. Now, typically in these battles like this, the militia fires 1, maybe 2 volleys, and then they run off and retreat and either just get off the battlefield or they hide behind the conventional forces. That's kind of the expectation for militiamen. That's the best you're gonna get out of these guys. 1, 2, maybe 3 volleys, and then they're gonna get out of the way. Francis Marion and his guys, however, reportedly stood in the pocket and fired up to 17 volleys, which is absolutely insane for a militia to pull off. As the battle devolves, they're pretty even on both sides, and it just turns into a slugfest. When it all settles down, both sides report, you know, roughly 100 men have been killed, roughly 300 men have been wounded, and like 50, 60, 70 men have been captured on each side. And at one point during this battle, part of the American line manages to actually fracture part of the British line, and they punch through into the wood line where the British have this camp set up and basically raid this camp. And when I say raid the British camp, I mean they found a bunch of casks of whiskey and beer and started drinking in the wood line in the middle of the battle. Okay, A, that's hilarious, but B, not a great or the right time to be doing that, and it actually gives the British time to like regroup and start counterattacking, at which point Nathaniel Greene orders the retreat and they dip out. And the Battle of Utah Springs, much like the Battle of Guilford's Courthouse we talked about previously, is a case where like both sides are declaring themselves the victor. They both feel as though they have won. And again, technically speaking, the British won because, you know, the Americans were attacking, so their goal was to stand their ground and defend that area, which they did in fact do because the Americans attacked and then retreated. But big picture wise, which is what Nathaniel Greene's concerned about, he wants to be able to go confront the British, kill enough of their guys that they're not strong enough to chase him all over the country and stop him from doing whatever he wants, which is exactly what he has succeeded in doing. So they've both achieved their goal. Ultimately, it is a case of the British have won the battle but lost the war, because this directly leads into the Siege of Yorktown that happens the very next month in October of 1781, which is where General Cornwallis surrenders and essentially is kind of seen as the end of the American Revolutionary War.
Oh, Senator.
Okay, fast forward, Yorktown has fallen, and this is kind of seen as like the end of the American Revolution. It's really not, because the actual Treaty of Paris that like formally ends the American Revolution and establishes America in the eyes of the British doesn't get signed until September of 1783, almost 2 years later. Yorktown is kind of cited as like the end of the American Revolution because that was the turning point where it basically crushed the British's will or any hopes they had of conquering or maintaining control of the colonies. So to put it simply, basically the British are no longer trying to win the war, they're just held up in their strongholds while they work out a peace treaty. And Francis Marion is going to keep the pressure on. Francis Marion continues launching guerrilla warfare operations for like the next 2 years. And to be fair, it does get harder for him because again, this entire war is about morale and a lot of people view the war as essentially over, but Francis Marion is still finding guys to help him out and putting in work the entire time. So while he's still going out there conducting guerrilla warfare operations against the British, he also gets elected to the South Carolina Senate. So now we have Senator Swamp Fox going out and conducting guerrilla warfare operations when he's not establishing new policy and propping up a new country.
No, Rabbit. Senator Francis Warboner hasn't had enough. Thank you, Splankets.
Okay, can we get back to this, please? This is the type of people that I want running the country. I want my politicians to be badasses. This is a 50-year-old man at this point, running around engaging the enemy. Meanwhile, 250 years later, I've got Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, a bunch of senior citizens that are just worried about insider trading the entire time, fucking over everybody.
Feels good, eh, Vern? You're really Liz. Never seen you this relaxed before.
I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. Anyways, Francis Marion's last operation is in August of 1782, and it is just, you know, one of his normal little missions. He's launching an attack on a British supply line, and during this battle, his wagon full of ammunition and his personal supplies gets taken out. His men run out of ammunition mid-fight, and Francis Marion is ordered to call for a retreat because his men run low on ammo, and he's not going to have them fix bayonets and risk their lives. And the last order that he issues in combat is the retreat, not for his own ego, but for the benefit of his men. And again, I bring this up because it's poetic. It summarizes who Francis Marion is as a leader. He is not going to put his ego and his emotions first. He doesn't care about getting this win. He doesn't care about being perceived as a loser. He cares about the big picture, and he cares about his men, and he does the right thing every single time. And while he's no longer fighting in direct combat, we also see him continuing this fight in politics.
Yeah, there's no rip. He didn't die from this. It's just his last official order as a military officer was to back off. Because, again, the war had already been won, effectively speaking. This was just keeping the fragments of the enemy force pinned down so they couldn't fuck around with shit while they were working on getting it officially. And yeah, it's like, there was no need to basically put his men in danger by having them fix bayonets or anything. There was no point to it. This was like literally just a skirmish. The war was over. This was just keeping them locked down. And there was no point to it. There was no need that nobody had to die. They would have actually been pointless deaths in the end. And he knew that. And he made the proper decision of, all right, we'll back off. We'll back off. Everybody can go back. You know, everybody will walk away, and nobody will lose their lives. The results of the retreat won't mean anything. He's not overly concerned about winning hearts and minds anymore. It was the right call. 100%. It was the right call.
During his career as a South Carolina senator, because his main concern, the main thing that he pushes, is not having retaliation against the people that supported the British, not having retaliation against the Tories. Because again, Francis Marion, always big picture, morale, optics, and moving forward. And he knows that if we're worried about people getting mad about shit that happened 3 years ago during this war, and you have people that were patriots retaliating against people that were Tories trying to burn down each other's houses for revenge, that everything's going to fall apart again and it's just going to devolve into a civil war, and he does everything he can to prevent that. And again, it comes at a great deal of self-sacrifice to Francis Marion because that is a wildly unpopular opinion to a lot of people, but he does it anyways because it's the right thing to do. After the American Revolutionary War had ended, obviously they didn't have the Medal of Honor yet at this point in time, but for major figures in the war, Congress did vote and elect to award gold medals to certain key people like Daniel Morgan, Nathaniel Greene, Thomas Sumner. Among them was Francis Marion, and while the other three did wind up receiving their gold medals, Francis Marion never did. After all of this, Francis Marion would return home to his farm only to find that his property had been ransacked multiple times and neglected for years. So he rebuilt it and went back to being a farmer before ultimately passing away on February 27, 1795 at the age of 63. And that is the story of Francis Marion, America's patron saint of guerrilla warfare, a 48 38-year-old farmer with a bum leg that would somehow almost single-handedly halt the British Southern strategy and become a legend in the process, known as the Swamp Fox. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch, maybe drink some Echelon, which is available at Vitamin Shop now, by the way, or you can order online. Links to both of those over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang, out. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. It took me a couple days to record this, and I was talking to my lovely wife about it, and she's like, who is it? And I was like, Francis Marion, the guy that Mel Gibson's character in The Patriot's based off of. And she's like, I've never seen that movie. So I realized that I'm a failure as a husband for not making my wife watch that movie with me. So I'm going to go do that right now. Okay, bye.
Oh, 07 General Senator Swamp Fox Francis Marion. Oh, that was worth the wait. Absolutely worth the wait to get that, to get this video and to do it right. Absolutely worth doing this right.
Burns bright, brighter